And Commissioner Bonet, we'll give you a few minutes before oral communication to introduce yourself as well.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, before the public begins, or
yes.
Even? Okay.
Almost there.
Can we get the mayor promoted to a panelist, please? Can we get the mayor promoted to a panelist, please?
Okay, we are ready.
All right. Welcome, Mayor Klein. All right, are we ready for me to call the meeting to order?
Yes, we are.
All right. This meeting of the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission is hereby called to order at 6:36 p.m. Before we get started, I would like to remind the BPAC of some procedural items for this meeting. During this meeting, commissioners and participants should remain muted when not speaking. If commissioners or participants have a question or comment, please use the raise hand feature. Speakers will be called upon to speak one at a time in the order in which they raise their hands. A random order voice vote will be administered by city staff for each vote. This BPAC meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with State of California Executive Orders N-29-20 and N-08-21 regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public may provide audio public comment by connecting to the teleconference meeting online or by telephone. Please use the raise hand feature to request to speak. That is *9 on your telephone. Automatically generated captions are available to viewers accessing this meeting via Zoom. Captions can be displayed or hidden using the live transcript button. Teleconference meeting details are available on the BPAC meeting agenda. Comments on matters not on the agenda must be submitted prior to the time the chair calls the item for oral communications. Comments on agenda items must be submitted prior to the time the chair closes the public hearing on the agenda item. Speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes, and time limits will be enforced. Guidelines are posted on the BPAC meeting agenda. City staff, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Paraka?
Commissioner Paradkar, you're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. Present.
Vice Chair Melman?
Present.
Commissioner Owie?
Present.
Commissioner Dave?
Present.
Chair Mellinger?
Present.
Commissioner Haveman?
Present.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Bonet?
Present.
And I believe that is all 7 present and accounted for. All right. Next on our agenda is oral communications. This category provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on items not listed on the agenda and is limited to 15 minutes. This section may be extended or continued after the public hearings general business section at the discretion of the chair. This will allow at most 3 minutes per speaker. Please note the Brown Act open meeting law does not allow commissioners to take action on an item not listed on the agenda. If you wish to address the commission, please complete a speaker card. Well, I guess we don't have speaker cards. Please raise your hand. Individuals are limited to 1 appearance during this section. Before we get started, 2 bits. First, if you are here to give comment on the Sunnyvale Avenue bike lanes, this is not the time to do it. We will have a comment on that following this item. Second, I believe we have an announcement from Commissioner Lee, and then after that we will hear from our new commissioner, Commissioner Bonet.
Thank you, Chair. As a brief announcement, San Jose is having Vive High San Jose. It's open street event in San Jose. It's a wonderful event where people get to see what it's like to bike and walk on wide streets without any cars present. Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition is also running Silicon Valley Bikes, a longer bike ride in conjunction with Vive High. Viva Kai also has a run associated with it. And finally, there's VTA has a central bikeway demonstration, which will be the first example of a bicycle superhighway in our area and perhaps in all of California. And they will have a demonstration that's set up on Viva Kai so people can see what that is like and experience it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Now I would like to turn the floor over to our new commissioner, Commissioner Bonet, so that he can say a few words to introduce himself. Welcome, Commissioner, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm a long-term resident of Sunnyvale, 21 years, coming up on 22, and an avid bicyclist. I feel very fortunate to have worked mostly in Sunnyvale within a distance of 3 to 10 miles from home, which is good, in my opinion, good bicycling range. And my kids who have gone through Sunnyvale School all also enjoy bicycling. So it's a matter that's close to heart. So I'm very pleased to serve on this committee.
Thank you very much. And we are all thrilled to have you here. All right. With that, I am now going to turn it over to the public for oral communications. As a reminder, if you wish to give comment on an item not on the agenda, which means not Sunnyvale Avenue, please go ahead and raise your hand now. And so far, I see one member of the public with their hand raised. Welcome, Mr. Durham.
Then I'm going to allow you to talk. You'll have 3 minutes to accept the request.
Go. Am I live again?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. My name is Ralph Durham, and I've been a long time resident of Sunnyvale. And I spent 8 years on the BPAC, the most recent 8 years ago. And since then, I have moved to Munich, Germany. And this has provided a bit of an eye-opening event for cycling around places with the accessibility that they have. Munich is no Amsterdam or one of the other Copenhagen, but they do have a few things going on. One thing I would like to note is there is an almost complete absence of sharrows and shared bike space with vehicles unless you're in a 30 kilometer an hour, which is about 18 miles an hour, residential district. This makes it very convenient for people of all ages to ride. Also, my third day here, I got out on my bike and I hit the sharrows on Fair Oaks in the transition period between Wolf and Fair Oaks, and ended up with 2 punishment passes. You know, sharrows are not the best solution. If Sunnyvale, my city, wants to get more people out on bikes, they really have to work on making the roads feel safe for a multitude of people. I witness daily when I'm at home, whole families going out on bicycles, and that includes, in fact, 2-year-olds on the Glide coaster bikes with no pedals, and children as young as 3 to 4 pedaling around. They get to stay on the sidewalks until they're 8, but you see families rolling along with the parents in the bikeway adjacent to the sidewalk, and the kids are rolling along on that. Usually they're towing something, or they have a seat on the bikes, so if the kid gets tired, they just hoist the bike up and put the kid in the basket, and it works quite well. But one of the biggest hindrances to increasing bike share is the perceived lack of safety. And that really has to be changed if Sunnyvale wants to get things going. So thank you very much. I'm glad to see the commission is trying to be active and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Durham. Next up, we have Ari Feinsmith.
Ari, you should have received an invite to talk. Please accept it, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the date and timing of this meeting. For future meetings, let's try to, if it's possible, try to avoid doing it on holidays. This evening is the end of the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, which is the most important Jewish holiday of the year. Yom Kippur starts on in the evening, in this case of yesterday, and goes until sundown tonight. I'm speaking on this call because there are issues that regard potential human life, and the value of human life is the most important value in Judaism. So I'm willing to make an exception, and that's why I'm on this meeting. But I can imagine that there are many others who are more religious than I am, who in some cases might not feel comfortable joining a meeting on Yom Kippur. So for future reference, just try to avoid that. Same with any other holiday of any other of Judaism or any other religion. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feinsmith. All right. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to give comment this eve on oral communications? All right. Seeing and hearing none, I am going to close oral communications. And now we are going to move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar is for routine business. Let me pull up my agenda one more time. So consent calendar is, all matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If a member of the public would like a consent calendar item pulled and discussed, please refer to the notice at the beginning of this agenda. Only one item on the consent calendar tonight, which is the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have any members of the public wishing to give comment on the consent calendar? And please use the raise hand feature if you wish to comment on the consent calendar. Going once, going twice. Seeing no members of the public wishing to give comment on the consent calendar, I'm going to close the public hearing on the consent calendar. Commissioners, colleagues, do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to accept the consent calendar as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Hafman. Is there a second?
I second. Commissioner Wee.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Before we vote on this, Commissioner Bonet, as you were not present at the previous meeting, the correct thing for you to do this time and this time only is to abstain on this item. But that is the only time you will be asked to do that.
Sure, thank you.
And with that, may we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Oe,
Yes.
Commissioner Paraka,
Yes.
Commissioner Dave,
Yes.
Chair Mellinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonet,
I abstain.
Commissioner Hafman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Melman.
Yes.
The motion was carried by 6 yes and 1 abstain.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tsang. Next on the agenda, we have file item 21-0765, recommend to City Council the removal of on-street parking on the east side of Sunnyvale Avenue between Maud Avenue and Arquez Avenue, and on both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arquez Avenue and Hendy Avenue to install buffered bicycle lanes on both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue per the active transportation plan. City staff, do we have a staff report?
Tonight we have a presentation on the proposed project. So I'm going to share the presentation. So the presentation is about the proposed Safe Route to School improvements that the city is looking to implement on Sunnyvale Avenue near Bishop Elementary School. Mr. Dangbert from Kimley-Horn Associates, who work with the city on the study, is present tonight as well to answer any questions related to the study. This is the agenda for tonight's presentation. We will first go over the project overview and discuss the needs for improvements on this corridor. Then we'll briefly talk about the on-street parking study that was conducted. We'll present to you the proposed bicycle improvements, the public outreach we have conducted for this project, our staff's interpretation of the data, the public outreach inputs we obtained, and how they relate to the city's adopted plans and policies. Then we'll go over the recommendation to City Council and the next steps. This map shows the project limits, which is highlighted in red, where staff is looking to implement bicycle improvements, which is on Sunnyvale Avenue between Hendy Avenue and Maud Avenue. This is the segment just north of the Caltrain railroad track and downtown Sunnyvale. The main objective for this project is to improve access to Bishop Elementary School and Columbia Middle School, and to improve bicycle safety and connectivity along the Sunnyvale Avenue corridor. This map shows the existing bicycle network near the project limits. As you can see on the map, there is currently a missing gap on Sunnyvale Avenue in the existing bicycle network between Hendy and Maud. This is an important corridor as it provides access to the Moffett Park area and the Bay Trail to the north, downtown and El Camino employment and retail area to the south. And it also connects to residential area. It also connects residential areas to Bishop Elementary School and Columbia Middle School. As part of the analysis, we also reviewed the existing bicycling usage on Sunnyvale Avenue based on 2019 pre-pandemic data. During the AM and PM peak hours on a typical weekday, there were approximately 100 bicyclists traveling along Sunnyvale Avenue. So this is for both during AM peak hour and PM peak hour. Keep in mind that this was the usage observed with no existing bicycle facility on this corridor. Also, we have reviewed the data collected on Strava, which is an app that a lot of bicyclists use to track their bicycling activities. On this map, darker color indicates routes with higher bicycle usage. And we can see that Sunnyvale Avenue has a higher usage as compared to the other parallel north-south routes, such as Matilda Avenue to the west and Fair Oaks Avenue to the east. Matilda Avenue does have an existing bicycle lane, and Fair Oaks Avenue is designated as a Class 3 bicycle route, where it is a signed route with people biking who are able to share the road with vehicular traffic. It appears that bicyclists choose Sunnyvale Avenue over Matilda and Fair Oaks because Sunnyvale Avenue has a lower posted speed limit and has less vehicular traffic along the corridor. In addition, it has a direct connection to downtown to the south, and there are overcrossing on Borregas Avenue to the north, which provide direct access to the area north of US 101. In August of last year, the City Council adopted the Active Transportation Plan, ATP in short, which consists of the bicycle plan, pedestrian plan, and safe route to school plan. Some of the goals identified in the ATP include to create a safe, connected, and efficient citywide walking and bicycling network, and to increase active transportation mode to 10% by 2030. The ATP also identified improvements to the bicycle and pedestrian network, as well as improvements near each of the 21 public schools that serve Sunnyvale students. The recommended improvements along Sunnyvale Avenue is to implement a Class 2B buffer bicycle lane, which is a dedicated lane with painted white line and painted buffer for bicyclists to travel on. The painted buffer separates bicyclists from vehicular traffic, providing additional comfort for bicyclists. The proposed improvements on Sunnyvale Avenue is a high priority project, which was identified by the community during the development of the ATP through various outreach process, and it provides access to key destinations within the city. As part of the study, we have conducted a series of on-street parking study to evaluate the on-street parking usage on Sunnyvale Avenue, as well as the neighboring streets. This figure shows the street segments where we collected on-street parking data. The segments in black are locations where on-street parking is prohibited. Segments in orange are locations on Sunnyvale Avenue where on-street parking is currently allowed. Segments in blue are nearby side streets, which we also collect the data for. A note is that for the segments of Sunnyvale Avenue between Hendy and California, parking is currently prohibited between 6 to 8 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. on weekdays. We collected data on 3 different weekdays in February of 2020. And on each of the observation days, we collected data throughout the day at 11 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m., and 1 p.m. to capture the on-street parking usage throughout the day. On this figure, the data shown are the average number of parked vehicles observed of the 3 days taken on Sunnyvale Avenue. You can see the different numbers in different colors. The number in black is the number of on-street parked vehicles each segment could accommodate. The number of parked vehicles observed at 11 a.m. is shown in red. The number of parked vehicles observed at 3 p.m. are shown in blue. The number of parked vehicles observed at 8 p.m. are shown in green, and the number of observed at 1 a.m. is shown in pink. Since the corridor consists of mostly residential homes, the peak occupancy of on-street parking occurred during the nighttime survey, taken at 1 a.m. when most residents are home. This figure shows the parking study summary for 1 a.m., which again, believe is the peak of the corridor. The segments in blue are locations where on-street parking is proposed to remain. And the orange segments are location where on-street parking is proposed to be removed, which includes both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue between Hendy and Arcus, and on the east side of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arcus and Maud. The numbers shown on a black background are the numbers of parked vehicles observed at 1 a.m. On the segments where we're proposing to remove on-street parking. The numbers shown on a green background are the number of unoccupied parking spaces observed on locations where on-street parking are proposed to be remained. The data shows that the nearby side streets and the west side of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arcus and Maud Avenue have enough availabilities to accommodate parked vehicles displaced from Sunnyvale Avenue. Parked vehicles could be shifted to a private driveway across the street or around the corner to the side streets. This table shows the number of parking space proposed to be removed in the second column, as well as the number of observed parked vehicles at 1 a.m. within the removal area. So only locations where we're proposing to remove on-street parking. Based on the data collected, we're proposing to remove a total of 69 spaces on Sunnyvale Avenue. And based on the data collected, a total of 18 parked vehicles would be impacted and would need to be relocated during the peak period at 1 a.m., of which 13 of them were observed on Sunnyvale Avenue between Maud and Arcus on the northern segment of the project limits, and 5 of them were observed between Arcus and Hendy, the southern segment. Next, I'm going to present to you the proposed improvements we're envisioning on Sunnyvale Avenue as part of this project. For the segment of between Maud and Arcus, highlighted in orange in this figure, we currently have 1 travel lane for each direction and on-street parking on both sides of the street. The existing travel lanes are pretty wide. They're about 13.5 feet wide, and the total curb-to-curb width is 43 feet. What we're proposing is to remove on-street parking on the east side of the road while maintaining on-street parking on the west side. We're proposing to reallocate the roadway space and to narrow the travel lane to install a buffered bike lane on both sides of the road. The buffer will serve as a separation between bicyclists and vehicular traffic, and the narrow travel lanes would guide drivers to travel slower to stay within the travel lane. For the segment of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arcus Avenue and Hendy Avenue, highlighted in orange on this figure, we also have 1 travel lane for each direction and on-street parking on both sides of the streets. And the total curb-to-curb width for this segment is a little narrower at 37 feet. For this segment, what we are proposing is to remove on-street parking on both sides of the road and to reallocate the space to install buffer bike lane on both sides of the street. Staff conducted a virtual public outreach meeting and hosted an online survey to obtain inputs from the public. Residents, property owners, and businesses near the project limits shown in the yellow highlighted area on this figure were notified of the meeting and the online survey via a mailer. The virtual public meeting was held on July 29th, and the online survey was available to the public to provide inputs for 3 weeks between July 12th and August 2nd of this year. There was a total of 16 members of the public who participated in the outreach meeting. Some of the major comments heard include some expressed displeasure with the loss of on-street parking. Some had concerns related to safety, convenience, and other personal factors. Some were enthusiastic about the project and voiced their support, focusing on the benefits that the project would bring. On the online survey, there were a total of 179 responses. 41 of them indicated that they live on Sunnyvale Avenue. 36 respondents indicated that they do park on Sunnyvale Avenue. And when asked why they park on Sunnyvale, we asked them to select all the choices that would apply to them. The top answers include visiting a friend or relative. No, there's no private parking at residence, or they are occupied, and it is more convenient to park on the street. When asked if they would bike more if buffer bike lanes were to be provided on Sunnyvale Avenue, 56% of the respondents indicated that they would. Out of the respondents who have children attending Bishop Elementary School, 44% of them indicated that they would consider letting their children bike to school with the new bike lane. 42 respondents provided written comments on the survey. 19 supported the proposed improvements. 19 of them did not support the removal of on-street parking. And there were 4 responses that were not directly related to the proposed project. Next, I'm going to present to you a summary of staff interpretation based on the data obtained, the outreach efforts conducted, and the adopted city plans and policies. From the on-street parking study, there is an average of 18 vehicles parked on the segments where on-street parking is recommended to be removed at 1 a.m., which is the peak period. The west side of Sunnyvale Avenue and the side streets have sufficient capacity to accommodate relocated parking demand within a short walking distance. Based on the public outreach meetings, and we have heard concerns related to safety, convenience, and other personal factors regarding the removal of on-street parking. We have also heard from individuals who expressed their appreciation for improving bicycle connectivity and the potential increase in bicycle ridership. This proposed project aligns with various city adopted plans and policy, included the general plan land use and transportation elements. We call it LUT in short. So for goal LT3, an effective multimodal system, a transportation system, policy LT3.8 prioritize safe accommodation for all transportation users over non-transport uses. And policy 3.9, parking is temporary storage for vehicles. Do not consider parking as transport use of public streets. From the Sunnyvale transportation, active transportation plan, Sunnyvale is a complete streets community. Residents and commuters have a choice to bike and walk. Sunnyvale aims to provide a connected, comfortable, convenient, safe, and efficient network, and we aim to increase active transportation mode to 10% by 2030. Vision Zero plan, which was adopted in 2019, there is a call to action to make Sunnyvale streets safer, especially for people biking and walking. For this project, we're proposing to install dedicated buffer bicycle lane, which are proven to improve safety and comforts for all users. The proposed improvement is a low-stress bicycle facility that is designed for all ages and abilities. From the Climate Action Playbook, which was also adopted in 2019, one of the goals is to reduce vehicle emissions and vehicle miles per person. In summary, here are some of the benefits and concerns related to the proposed improvements. On the benefit side, the proposed improvements would close a gap in an already well-utilized bicycle corridor. It will provide people with additional options beyond driving a vehicle. It will improve bicycle access to Bishop Elementary School and Columbia Middle School, and connecting residential area, El Camino Real, downtown and downtown area to Moffett Park and Bay Trail. In terms of concerns, if this proposed project were to be implemented, residents from 19 single-family homes along the corridor will not be able to park in front of their homes. Residents may need to walk up to 300 feet to park around the corner, and there are perceived safety issues within the neighborhood. Tonight, we're here to present the project to BPAC and ask BPAC to make a recommendation to City Council. There are two alternatives for consideration, and staff's recommendation is alternative 1, recommend to City Council the removal of on-street parking on the east side of Sunnyvale Avenue between Mott Avenue and Arcus Avenue, and on both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arcus Avenue and Handy Avenue, and to install buffer bicycle lanes on both sides of Sunnyvale per the active transportation plan. For the next steps, here's a summary of the project progress. As indicated earlier, we held a public outreach meeting in July. We hosted an online survey in July and August. And tonight, we are here to present the project to BPAC and ask BPAC to make a recommendation to City Council. And we plan to present this project to City Council on September 28th, where we would ask the City Council to provide directions on the next steps. And this concludes my presentation for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tseng. All right, members of the commission who have questions on the staff presentation, please use the raise hand feature. You will be called on to speak in the order in which you raise your hand. As a reminder, please do not express opinions on the project until after we have had a chance to hear public comment. And first up, we have Commissioner Wee.
Thank you, Chair. On slide 16, where staff showed Sunnyvale Ave between Arquez Avenue and Hendy Avenue with proposed bicycle improvements, I noticed that the drive lane was 10.5 feet currently, but it'll be wider with the new proposed configuration. Why wouldn't staff just continue having the narrower lane, actually for the full length of Sunnyvale, not just this piece, but have a 10.5 foot wide lane? Because narrow lanes reduce traffic speeds, and traffic speeds on this particular corridor are a concern, and we'd like to keep them down. So why not have a narrower lane?
So there is a bus route. Sunnyvale Avenue is a VTA bus route, and in coordinating with VTA, they did indicate that for an arterial that for a road that serves that would have a bus traveling on it, it would require a minimum of 11 feet travel lane to accommodate a bus.
So that's a requirement of theirs, not a preference?
I don't believe it's a preference because it's because of the width of the bus and how and the safety for the roadway users.
Although currently, have we had any bus issues on it with the narrower lanes that we have there now?
I'm not sure if there's any existing issues, but then in coordinating with VTA, whenever we do improvements on the roadway, that would be what they would be requiring is an 11-foot travel lane.
How wide is a bus?
That I'm not too sure. I will have to look up that information.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
All right, next up we have Commissioner Bonet.
Ms. Stang, I have a question on the count of bicyclists. Was that a count total during the day, or was that a count per hour? These were data that were shown in the early part of the presentation.
That was the count during the peak hour of the day. So let me share the screen again.
Meaning riders per hour.
Riders per hour, correct, by direction. So these are the number of bicycle counts that we obtained for each of the directions within the peak hour.
Okay.
So this is during the AM peak hour, PM peak hour, and so forth.
Were there data gathered to count the total number of bicyclists in the course of one day?
We did not collect that data at the time.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bonet. Commissioner Haithman.
Yes, on the parking studies, were any of the studies conducted during the day on a weekend?
No, there wasn't. Usually, because if it's a lot of times we look at the typical weekday just to see what the typical conditions are, and also because the majority of the land use along the corridor are residential homes. So we believe that the nighttime, the late at nighttime, that would be the peak for residential land use, because that's when most residents will be home.
I asked the question because a lot of the comments that came through emails was that there's a lot of parking on weekends because families get together, et cetera.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Haithman. Commissioner Haithman, did you have additional questions?
No, I lowered my hand.
All right, thank you. Commissioner DeVay, before we get to you, Commissioner Wee, I did some quick research and a VTA bus is 10 feet wide. So now Commissioner DeVay.
So my research said it was 10.5 feet wide, mirror to mirror. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Commissioner DeVay. All right. I have a few questions. Were class 4 bike lanes considered, class 4 protected bike lanes considered for part or all of this stretch?
So for Sunnyvale Avenue, because again, the majority of the land use are single family homes, so there are frequent driveways along this corridor. Therefore, this location would not be ideal for a class 4 facility with the frequent breaks in driveways.
Understood. Thank you. In your professional opinion, Ms. Tsang, is there any way to maintain street parking on this stretch of street while also adding all ages and abilities bicycle facilities?
So we look at the width of the roadway for both segments, and it is quite limited. Again, we mentioned that for the northern segment, the existing link width is 43 feet. And, to maintain 2 travel lane of 11 foot each. So that's 22 already. And so it's, minimum bike lane would be 5 foot each. And then minimum buffer would be 1.5 feet. So really it's, the limitation is the curb to curb space.
Understood. You mentioned the bike counts were from Strava.
The bike counts, I believe, was not from Strava. The figure was from Strava.
The heat map. Understood.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Thank you. So you actually had someone on the street counting cyclists.
Mr. Dankberg, can you respond to that question?
Yes. So we performed traffic counts at those intersections back in 2019, and during the process of collecting traffic counts, we also collected bicycle counts, and that's the source of those that count data.
Fantastic. Thank you. Finally, do we have any data on violent crime in this neighborhood or in the surrounding areas? Because a number of the emails that we've received have specifically cited the risk of crime, muggings, et cetera, as a concern.
Mm-hmm. So we touched base with the Department of Public Safety and asked them if they could provide that information. They indicated that on the Sunnyvale website, there is a neighborhood crime map, which is a public crime map maintained by an independent company that allows residents to input an address and view the crime activities in a specific area of the city. So I'm not from DPS, I'm not a crime analyst or expert, but I have taken a look at the map to understand the number of incidents that occur along the project corridor and on the immediate side streets in 2019, 2020, and 2021, and found that the number of incidents that occur along the study corridor and the immediate side streets is the number are not that many, and there are less than other Sunnyvale residential neighborhoods.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Tseng. That concludes my questions. Vice Chair Melman.
Yes, so looking at the proposed improvements on Sunnyvale Avenue, where the bike lane is adjacent to the sidewalk, when it comes to trash day, how will the residents be able to address being able to put their containers out for pickup without obstructing the bike lane?
So again, that is a challenge that I think a lot of the cities have with limited curb to curb right of way. And because on trash day, the individual residents are supposed to put the trash bin as close to the curb as possible. And so that would be where they would continue to place their trash, their bins. And so on those days, bicyclists would likely need to be a little more careful when they travel along this corridor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Melman. Commissioner Bonet, you had your hand up. Do you have a question still?
No, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Dave.
I just have an observation that the average trash can width is the same as the gray cement gutter width and does not extend into the paved area. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dave. All right, do we have any further questions from our commissioners of city staff? All right, Commissioner Hafman.
Yeah, one question I forgot to ask earlier. Sorry about that. One of the comments was that if you don't have parking in front of your house, an Uber, Lyft, or paratransit person can't stop in front of a house and pick up a passenger. Is that true?
That is not entirely true. Like any, if we were to put a no parking sign, some of these vehicles could do a quick stop to do pick up and drop off.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hafman and Ms. Tseng. All right, seeing no further commissioner questions, I'm going to open the public hearing on this. If you are interested in giving comment on this item, please raise your hand now. I'm going to wait before opening this because I would like to get a count of the number of members of the public wishing to speak on this so that I can allocate time per speaker. So if you wish to participate and give public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand now. And if you are on a telephone, please dial *9 on your telephone. All right, with 10 members of the public having raised their hands, in the interest of time, I am going to suggest that we limit public comment to 2 minutes per speaker rather than 3. And with that, I am prepared to open public comment now. You can still go ahead and raise your hand. If you wish to give public comment, speakers will be called upon in the order in which they raise their hands. I believe the first speaker that we have is Lauren. Welcome, Lauren.
Lauren has submitted a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen.
Hi, Lauren. We
Great.
accept the request. And
you can hear me, I assume?
You have 2 minutes to speak. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is a 3-minute presentation.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to reshare it. I think I need to do one at the end. Okay. Okay. Ready now.
Ready, go. This is a 2-minute presentation or a 3-minute presentation, so I'm going to try to condense it into 2. I live on a street adjacent to the project area. I have kids who walk and bike to Bishop and Columbia. My family walks, bikes, drives on Sunnyvale Avenue almost every day, and we think this is a good project. It's the most important north-south corridor in all of Sunnyvale. The city already talked about the bike trips and during commute hours. It's the best option for people living in lowlanders and snail neighborhoods to get to downtown Sunnyvale. And this 3/4 mile gap is the only gap in what is otherwise an 11-mile continuous bike lane from the Bay Trail all the way down to Saratoga. Next slide, please. Biking on Sunnyvale Avenue is scary. And if you want to do the video real quick, hopefully the sound is on. There you go. That's a dad that I saw riding with, I assume, his son, and a car driving past very fast, having to go over the double yellow line. It's really scary to bike on Sunnyvale Avenue, particularly with kids. Driver's speed. If you ride next to parked cars, your risk of getting doored. And the VTA buses and trucks have to pass really quickly. There's been recorded bike and ped crashes there. And one way to solve this problem is to put bike lanes in. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. I think that the project can be even better if the city applies treatments from its roadway safety plan for pedestrians. A few of them are noted here. You can go to the next
slide. You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. I'm going to skip this slide, go to the next slide. Bike lanes give us freedom and choice. Go to the next slide. The next slide. We are asking our neighbors to park in their driveway across the street or around the corner in order to provide safety improvements for the greater community. And these are just some pictures that I took of bicyclists using Sunnyvale Ave. And the next slide is a proposed motion that I'm leaving you with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I would ask that you email your proposed motion to Ms. Sang or to bpac@sunnyvale.ca.gov because we only saw that for a glimpse. And members of the public, any member of the public can still do that. Next up, we have Ari Feinsmith. Mr. Feinsmith, welcome.
Well, Ari, you should have the speaker request. Please accept them. You have 2 minutes to talk. Hello, Ari.
Mr. Feinsmith, you are still muted. I have asked you to unmute. All right, we will come back to Mr. Feinsmith. Next up, we have Mr. Durham. Welcome, Mr. Durham.
Mr. Durham, you'll have 2 minutes to talk.
There we go. It appears I am unmuted now. Thank you very much for taking the call. The short answer is do this. You have a break in the route. You need connectivity. Any hopes of getting to the 10% goal have to include no breaks in the routes and making it easier and more convenient for people and safer for people to get to and from where they're going. When I lived here permanently, I was using Sunnyvale in many cases on my route home from Stanford. I would come in from Fremont Avenue straight down Sunnyvale to Maud, and it wasn't the best route, although to me it seemed better than some of the other alternatives. The options of cyclists moving over to Fair Oaks with the Sharrows is a non-starter. You will not increase bike traffic on that until you do something and remove the Sharrows and put something reasonable in. So this is a good plan. Please vote for it. Just remember that parking is the lowest use of public facilities for transportation. If you can't get vehicles and people moved on the street and you have plenty of room, parking could be allowed. But as it is, you need the space for people to get to and from where they're going in a safe, convenient manner. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Durham. All right, we're going to try Mr. Feinsmith one more time. And if that isn't sorted, we'll put him to the bottom of the list. So Mr. Feinsmith, welcome. And Mr. Feinsmith, you are still muted. All right. Mr. Feinsmith, clicked the ask to unmute button for you. I'm going to suggest that you drop off and log back on, or failing that you attempt to use your telephone. All right, we're going to move on to Ms. Henson now. Welcome, Ms. Henson.
Ms. Henson, you will have 2 minutes to talk.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So if the traffic division is concerned about creating a safe bike lane for use by children going to and from Bishop School or Columbia Middle School, why not use the safer bikeways that are already in existence, including those quieter and less traffic streets of Bayview, which borders the backside of Bishop School, and Morse Avenue, which borders Columbia Middle School? Why disrupt an entire neighborhood of homeowners and property taxpayers by removing the parking on North Sunnyvale when there are alternatives for the school children that are actually safer because the traffic is not going to be slowed on Sunnyvale? We've actually sat in our front yard during the day counting the number of children riding to and from school in the mornings and evenings. And we've come up with about 3 kids going to Bishop School and about 5 who appear to be going to Columbia Middle School. So how can you justify using the Sunnyvale stretch when quieter and safer Bayview and Morse already exist, and they're a safer route for young children to take, rather than have them be on a major street with buses, Google buses, and speeding traffic? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henson. Next up, we have Mr. Henson. Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. Next up, we have Ms. Shockley. Welcome, Ms. Shockley.
Ms. Shockley should have 2 minutes to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm a 10th grader at Homestead High School, and I've lived on Sunnyvale my whole life between Maud and Arquez, making my house in the area of the no parking on the east side of Sunnyvale. I'm asking you to rethink this plan, and my reason for this is a few months ago, I was walking my dogs, and I was followed by a man from my house to Bishop. This happened around 7 at night, so it was starting to get dark, and I called the police because I did feel unsafe, and I felt like I was going to be kidnapped or something. With the removal of parking on the east side of Sunnyvale, that would mean my family would have to park their cars on side streets away from my house. Because of what happened to me, my family and me are scared that if the removal happens, we will be at risk for kidnappers, rapists, or muggings, especially later at night. I'm asking you to rethink the removal of parking between Maud and Arquez on behalf of all females, males, and younger kids who are residents of Sunnyvale Avenue and are scared of kidnappers and rapists and muggings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shockley. And I want to say personally that I'm very sorry that you had this experience. Next up, we have Mr. Henson. Welcome.
Ms. Henson, you will have 2 minutes to talk.
There we go. Okay, here we go. Yeah, how can the city and their grant funding agencies justify a new bike lane on the North Sunnyvale Avenue by eliminating parking for these homeowners at the same time, turning them out onto the street, their senior citizens, in a supposed senior-friendly city? I'm 68 years old, a white-haired old guy with a complete right knee implant who will only get older and more infirm as the years go by. I and others will be walking back and forth from our parked cars somewhere on Schroeder Avenue to our homes on North Sunnyvale Avenue, making multiple trips, carrying bag after bag of groceries, night or day, rain or shine, finally finishing off a single Safeway grocery trip of 8 bags amounting to a 2-mile walk. I'll be stressed out by the irate homeowners in Schroeder and Taylor, who will be yelling at me for their parking in their spot, or by the police, who will be called in to intervene in these parking disputes. Instances like these that I described have occurred to me while attempting to park on Taylor, Schroeder, or on the west side of North Sunnyvale Avenue presently. I don't need that kind of stress in my life. Nobody does. If this bike lane goes in, the problem will snowball for myself and my neighbors and on into the futures for the remainder of our lives. How can you justify, advocate the removal of on-street parking for a bike lane in light of this forced confrontational existence which the city will impose on its seniors and others like myself? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henson. Next up, we have a phone number ending in 335. Speaker with the phone ending in 335. Can we get them unmuted, please?
Hello, you have been unmuted. You have 2 minutes. I will give you a 30-second warning because you are calling your phone.
Good evening, commissioners and board members. My name is Valerie Suarez. I'm a Snail resident, and I would strongly urge the staff to reconsider removing parking for the residents on the Sunnyvale Road. I know that this is a very busy street. It's a straight up from the downtown of Sunnyvale. And I have seen and observed cars and buses and speedy motorcyclists going up and down this road. I do believe, like the previous speaker, that there is an alternative. There are alternative routes to these two schools that are a lot safer for bicyclists and users of 2, 3, and 4 wheels. I think that it is absolutely imperative to look for better and safer rides to schools. And to close up, I sincerely encourage you to review the idea of providing safer alternatives. Let's think of bicycling routes that would be perceived as being safe, rather than just drawing a line between 2 lanes and just expecting bicyclists to take this route just because the city staff believes that it's the right way to do it. Thank you for letting me speak, and please consider not removing parking spots for the residents and creating alternative, safer routes to school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Suarez. Next up, we have Mr. Bernhardt.
Hello, Mr. Bernhardt. You'll have 2 minutes to talk.
Yes. So I'm in favor of the bike lanes. Ironically, I've ridden down much of that 11 miles from Sunnyvale to Saratoga regularly, but not in the other direction. So I'm going to try to provide some objective observations here from my experience just today going up and down that street and taking a look at a few things. First of all, safety and the perceptions thereof seems to be a huge comment here, whether it be on that main street or in the surrounding neighborhood. There's an elementary school on that street. Kids are going to take this road regardless of whether we tell them there's another road or not. So that's something to consider. Ambiguity, and I like to say we're bikes versus cars versus bikes ride. I can give you some anecdotal comments just from today. I had 2 incidents going up and down the road. One was where a bike was on the sidewalk and came out in the road right in front of me, but then a car was in a quickly pulled over to a no parking spot, thereby blocking me. These are things to think about in the big picture. Of reducing that ambiguity and thereby increasing safety. Beauty is another issue. Road improvements in general tend to create more structure and increase the connectivity between the elementary school and the parks. Convenience, it needs to be weighed between the parking and the utility of and safety of a major corridor. And then finally, something that may not have been overtly stated is that businesses along the corridor and the Sunnyvale program to provide free biking parking spots, it may actually improve business from bikers along the corridor and at both ends. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernhardt. Next up, we have Kathleen. Kathleen, welcome.
Hello, Kathleen. You'll have 2 minutes to talk.
Yes, I am the resident that is handicapped, and I know 100% for a fact, Uber and Lyft drivers and paratransit will not stop in front of my home if there is no parking there because of a bike lane. So I just wanted to clarify that. It is at the driver's discretion and the drivers do not want to take that opportunity. Moving on from there, we formed a group and we have talked to all 10 homeowners that live along Arquez and Taylor, between Arquez and Taylor. All homeowners are against the removal of on-street parking. We are not against the bike lane. So what I'm requesting is a formal request go in to review what is going on and find a way that the community can work together, the bicyclists, the residents, and still keep our parking. I will have major issues with drop-offs and deliveries if I cannot have people parking in front of my house. So that's the main concerns there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Next, we have Mr. Howard. Welcome, Mr. Howard.
Hello, Mr. Howard. You'll have 2 minutes to talk.
Thank you. Chair Mellinger, honorable residents of the BPAC and the staff, thank you for the time and the attention you're giving to your city tonight. My name is Daniel Howard. I serve as chair of the Planning Commission. I'm speaking only for myself. I live on Hazleton, just off Sunnyvale Avenue, across the street from Bishop. I live in the same subdivision as our neighbors on the east side of Sunnyvale Avenue. It's the same 1949 3-bedroom house. It's the same dinky 1-car garage and the single wide driveway. I've never parked a car in the garage because nobody does that. We find the street parking convenient, especially when I want to free up the driveway for carpentry or bicycle maintenance. So the city came to me one day and said, Daniel Howard, we're looking to remove the free on-street parking from in front of your house. My first reaction would be, but why? I like my free off-street parking directly from my house. I'm going to fight you. But the city says, hear me out. The city says, okay, we're going to remove the free parking from the city street and put it in a bike lane. It's going to fill a gap in our bicycle network. More people feel safe riding their bicycles. More residents of Sunnyvale will have the option to get around town by burning body fat instead of burning carbon. Our community will be happier and healthier. But you know, you may have to park across the street and occasionally move the car to free up the driveway for grandma. I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, less free stuff for me means we all live in a better city. That pencils out. What took us so long? I'll go move the car now. I want to paraphrase President Kennedy's inaugural address. Ask not what your city can do for you, ask what you can do for your city. I wish people took that advice to heart more often. Street parking is nice to have, but really not an inalienable right. And I can assure you from my life experience living in other places that if you have to schlep a little bit to park your car, it's not the end of the world. You're going to be okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard. Next up, we have Christian. Welcome, Christian.
Hello, Christian. You'll have 2 minutes to talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I live on Schroeder Street, so around the corner from where you're going to, possibly stop allowing people on the east side to park. I noticed in the presentation that it looked like in your 1 a.m. Review, there were 10 cars parked on Sunnyvale, and then there were 10 open spaces on Schroeder. So that means that potentially there would be no parking available on my street, which means, there would be nowhere for anyone that was coming to visit anyone that lived on Schroeder to park. Or if we had company staying with us, wanting to sleep over, stay a weekend, and there was no review done on weekends, which is when most people will have gatherings. And I can tell you parking can get a little tight around here just from weekend events, especially around holidays. So that's going to cause more parking to spill further down. And so it'll affect more people than just the people in the area that the initial review looked to be done. I was also wondering, was there any review done about removing or changing the sidewalk to expand the road area? More than just removing the parking, because that corridor also on the east side has trees and telephone poles and such that actually widen the sidewalk more than on the west side. And so I'm just curious if that was looked at, possibly narrowing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. Next up, we're going to hold Mr. Feinsmith until the end in case there are any further technical difficulties. So next up, we have Ms. Nika. Welcome, Ms. Nika.
Hello, Nika.
Hello.
Hi, you'll have 2 minutes to talk.
I would like to know if any alternative solution has been reviewed for this project. For example, installing a class 3 bike lane on the whole entire vehicle and bicycle lanes, such as on Fair Oaks and Wolf Avenue, has been redesigned. Those streets are higher speed than our speeds, and that solution was acceptable. I also would like to ask your consideration to remove the 13 spots from your calculation that's in front of Bishop High School, Elementary School. Those are not residential spots, therefore it should not be included in your calculations. Have the city considered the zoning changes on the west side where now mother-in-law units can be installed, thus the parking demand is gonna be higher? Does the city consider the funky parking styles of people, even though there is so many spots available? Last night, I only see 3 spots on the west side because people are parking such a way that they take up 2 spots instead of 1 spot. Have the city considered the upcoming restructuring of the corner of Sunnyvale and Mud and doing the overpass or the underpass for bicyclists and pedestrians and cars? How will that impact the traffic coming down on the streets? Let's see, I gotta go to. Also, it's not just minor inconvenience, it is safety for us, for property values, for not just convenient, it's not just 600 feet of walking, it's back and forth. It is really concerned for me that my daughter's safety, my safety, and everyone of our safety is in a risk. We would like to have a safer biking lane in the city, and we would like to have our parking spots too. So I'm respectfully asking to reconsider this one and come up with a mutual solution where the city meets its own obligation to our constituents, regardless that it's only 10 cars on 18 residents and so forth. We're still a community, we are still people with heart, and we do matter. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nika. Next up, we have Lori. And if you want to give comment after Lori, please raise your hand now. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, this is Lori. I just wanted to speak up. I'm fully in favor of having the bike lanes down Sunnyvale Avenue. I remember when my daughter was 5 or 6 years old at Bishop Elementary, and we would bike down Sunnyvale Avenue, and we'd cross the Caltrain tracks, right? So there's a lot of space there that we've been talking about. But then we would hit, you cross over Evelyn, and you get the bike lanes there, right? So there's the barriers, there's the buffers there. And I just relaxed more. And I always wondered about it. And then I started thinking about, wow, bike lanes down all the way down Sunnyvale Avenue. It makes me, as a mother of 2 kids that live in this area, much more likely to want to bike and move around, but also just the safety factor. I think that all the safety lines that we have going down all the way down, but we don't have it on this one track going up to Bishop Elementary is unfortunate. So I would like to see safe bike lanes put in all the way through. And my children do bike. That daughter now goes to Columbia, and she bikes. We want to bike towards Columbia, but we want to bike to the library. That's where we were going when she was in kindergarten. We want to bike downtown to the farmer's market. So I just I wasn't planning to speak, but I am now. So I just want to be that I fully support having safe bike lanes put in. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to give Mr. Feinsmith one last chance to make his comment. And so anyone else who wishes to speak, raise your hand now. Welcome, Mr. Feinsmith.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Sorry about technical difficulties. Sunnyvale Avenue is the most important north-south connector in Sunnyvale for bicyclists. There's no safe alternatives. Fair Oaks has sharrows and cars go 40 miles per hour. Matilda has bike lanes, but it's very high traffic volumes and even faster speeds. It's not safe. Sunnyvale Avenue is the most highly used and important bicycle network connector. It's not safe in this segment. There are no bike lanes for it, and so bicyclists have to take the lane and worry about cars coming up behind them. As a cyclist myself who bikes frequently on this route, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder to make sure there's not a car coming at me. Sometimes when a car does come out, I have to go over to the right so I don't have, so the car can pass me, and then I've almost hit a parked car as I try to go back into the lane. It's not safe, and I'm a relatively experienced cyclist. I worry for the vulnerable riders, such as elderly and children, who are not as experienced as I am, and someone is going to get hit and die. This project is incredibly important for the safety of our residents. I believe that I asked that the community that we remove parking for the benefit of Sunnyvale and the community. It's a reasonable ask. There are 18 cars would have to be removed, relocated, and there's 113 open spaces on street nearby. This is a relatively safe neighborhood, and I believe that this is the way to go. Please remove the parking as suggested by city staff and put in the bike lanes for the safety of our residents. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feinsmith. Seeing no further members of the public with their hands raised, I'm going to close the public hearing now and bring this back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Wee.
I was wondering if we had the text that was suggested by Lauren.
I do. Ms. Ledbetter emailed it to myself and to Ms. Tsang. So the additional, I can read that text to you now if you would like. And I actually have some questions of staff regarding that, which is it's alternative 1 followed by and incorporate into the project pedestrian safety improvements at California/Sunnyvale intersection, bridge over Central Expressway, and uncontrolled crosswalk at Hazelton Avenue.
Thank you very much. Let me mull that over and let someone else speak. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Do we have further questions of staff? Seeing no commissioners with their hands raised, I have a few questions of staff, actually, that have been brought up by members of the public. The first is for the areas of street parking that remain, especially on Sunnyvale Avenue and potentially on the side streets, can we mark the remaining parking spots to prevent double parking? I know many cities do the little cross marks on the street to indicate this is a parking spot. Park your car here so that there's room in the other parking spot for someone else. Is that a possibility?
We could explore that possibility, but then we do need to discuss it because typically our city don't install those markers, as it would increase some of the operation and maintenance costs to have additional painting on the ground. So I would have to, discuss with internally to see if this is something that we could implement.
But we could, for instance, as part of our motion, ask for you to examine that and, if appropriate, bring such an option to council if feasible.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Next question. How much notice would be provided to residents prior to the removal of parking if this were to be adopted by council?
If this were to be adopted by City Council, we would be moving into the design of, because this is currently a planning study only, so we'll have to move into the design phase and then construction. I don't have the schedule, but it likely would take at least 1.5 years or so.
Understood. So residents would have ample. Residents would have. Okay, thank you. So residents would have a substantial amount of time to make arrangements for their vehicles during that time.
Correct.
All right. The language proposed by Ms. Ledbetter regarding incorporating pedestrian safety improvements at California/Sunnyvale, the Central Expressway Bridge, and the uncontrolled crosswalk at Hazelton Avenue. In your opinion, in your professional opinion, Ms. Zhang, would that be appropriate to include with this project, or would that be considered out of scope?
So let's see, I think at Hazelton, we are going to be, so first of all, this project is funded by a grant that we obtained. So when we submitted for the grant application, there were specific scope that was included. And I believe that at Hazelton and Sunnyvale, we are going to be installing high visibility crosswalk.
Okay.
As part of the project. And then in terms of California and along the bridge over Central Expressway, those were not included in the original application of the grant. So currently we don't have the necessary funding to implement those improvements.
Understood. Do we have our TDM goodie list set up at this point for commissioners to add item? TDA, not TDM. Yes, yes. Do we have the list, the wish list for that set up yet? Because this might be appropriate for that.
Yeah, I could put that on the list.
Fantastic. I would request that you include those onto the TDA wish list, please. Finally, in your professional opinion, would Class 3 bike lanes or sharrows constitute an all ages and abilities bicycling facility given the context of this street?
So how we define all ages and ability facility is a separated facility. So even Class 2 bike lane are not something that we considered an all ages and ability, because it doesn't provide a separation between bicyclists and the motor vehicles. So therefore, Class 3 nor Class 3B are considered all ages and ability facilities.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And final question, a resident suggested the possibility of changing the right-of-way and changing the width of the sidewalk on Sunnyvale. Back of the envelope, what would that cost compared to what the numbers are we're looking at for this project?
So in order to do that, we will have to shift the curb along Sunnyvale Avenue, which is, and reconstruct all the driveways. So it'll be very impactful to all the residents and the pedestrians environment, as well as it is going to be a pretty high cost. We probably need to redo all the drainage and so forth. So it is cost. I do believe that, in terms of looking at this project as part of the grant, using the grants to implement, is going to be cost prohibitive.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tsang. All right, that does it for my questions. Commissioner Bonet.
Thank you. Ms. Tsang, two questions. The first one, several comments from the public indicated a feeling of lack of safety, and I was wondering whether this area has the average number of street lights for nighttime illumination, or is it above or below average?
I cannot answer that question right now, but all the streets within Sunnyvale, we try to maintain a minimum distance for streetlights between each individual streetlight, so that we could provide the required lighting for different streets. But I will have to check for you on that to confirm.
And the second question, in some cities, in order to make enough room for the parking and the vehicular traffic, cars are asked to park with half of the wheels on sidewalks or off the street. Is that here an option to make more room for vehicle and bike lanes?
So those actually depends on the type of curb the road has. The ones where vehicles could park partially on the curb, on the sidewalk, that kind of sidewalk is called a road curb. So it's kind of rounded. Along Sunnyvale Avenue, I believe a lot of the sidewalks are actually an actual curbed sidewalk. So it's difficult for vehicles to drive over that curb to park on the sidewalk.
But would there be enough room if this were desirable? Apart from the curb style, is there enough room to make this even a feasible option?
So that would reduce the sidewalk for pedestrian. So it's going to be a balancing act in terms of how we allocate the existing roadway width that we have. Because if vehicles were to park partially on the sidewalk, then it will narrow the sidewalk width.
And I can chime in here if desired. The sidewalk width is fairly narrow in some portions of the corridor. While there is landscaping and trees in some areas and others there are not, with a sidewalk width of around 5 to 6 feet. So it is likely that if a vehicle parked on the sidewalk, then the sidewalk would not meet minimum ADA requirements due to that impact.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bonet. Commissioner Wee.
Are we ready to entertain a motion?
I would propose that we take a brief 5-minute recess before we entertain a motion, if we have no further questions, because we've been at this for an hour and a half. Do any of my fellow commissioners have additional questions of staff? Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to declare a 5-minute recess. We will return at 8 p.m. Thank you. All right, it is 8 p.m. Are all our members returned from their recess? I'll wait until I see video for everyone. All right, seeing all of our members returned, I'm going to now hand things over to Commissioner Wee for a motion. Unless Commissioner Hafman, is that a question or is that a post-motion comment you're lining up?
I actually have a question.
Commissioner Wee, with your leave, we'll hear Commissioner Hafman's question first.
Yes, please.
Yes, in reviewing the on-street parking study, I came across a question I forgot to ask, and that is when they were looking at parking spaces that could be available for some of the residents on Sunnyvale, they actually didn't, in the area between Arquez and Mod, they didn't really consider East Arquez other than to Schwallinger or Taylor. So actually there's more spaces, I bet, on those two streets that really weren't considered that would be available and actually could be shorter walking distance than those on Schrodinger. So I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
So we were trying on Taylor and Arquez, we were only trying to collect data for the first segment because we believe that residents typically wouldn't be walking that far into the street to find parking. And that is a natural kind of like a stopping point to consider. Whereas Schroeder, we do want to take a look at it and understand what the parking occupancy were. But then, you know, it's hard to do like, you know, partial Schroeder when it could be, you know, it could connect to Arquez and Taylor. That's why we collect the data on both on the entire stretch of Schroeder.
Okay, so actually, if you had looked at a scenario where parking within a certain number of feet, I think you'd probably come with even more parking spots because,
correct.
You know, if you had to park down the middle of Schroeder, then you have to walk to one of those two streets to get back to Sunnyvale. It would actually be closer if you parked a little bit further down on one of those other streets. So the point I was making, there may actually be more available parking spaces than what the study showed.
Thank you, Commissioner Hafman. Commissioner DeVay, do you have a question or do you have a post-motion comment?
I have a question
right.
about the ability for ride services to pull over to the curb in bicycle lane areas where there's no parking spaces marked for cars. Is there some sort of marking that can be given for those type of vehicles so that they can understand it's okay for them to pull over? Is there some sort of accommodation for something like that? Let me know. Thank you.
I don't believe there is that type of signage available for this purpose. I mean, however, you know, as observed in other cities, especially with TNC, the transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, we've seen that they typically would stop at a lot of different locations, even though, you know, they're not legally allowed to. So, you know, on locations where there's no parking sign, you know, they could still be stopping for a short period of time. So we've seen those vehicles stop and do a pickup and drop off at those locations. And then in addition, there is a driveway space also in front of some of these single family home, you know, so they could just pull up to the driveway quickly, not necessarily on the driveway, but, you know, parallel on the streets. And that would be doable as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tseng. Do we have any further questions before we go to a motion? Going once, going twice. All right, Commissioner Wee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And before I get to the motion, I would like to make the comment regarding Uber drivers. I do see them pulling over and using bike lanes all the time. And if there's no parking, that is okay. If it says no standing, no stopping, that's when it becomes prohibited. But no parking is just fine for Uber drivers to temporarily let passengers go at the curb. Okay, on to my motion. So I move that BPAC support staff alternative 1, recommend to City Council the removal of on-street parking on the east side of Sunnyvale Avenue between Maud Avenue and Arquez Avenue, and on both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue between Arquez Avenue and Hendy Avenue, and to install buffered bike lanes on both sides of Sunnyvale Avenue per the active transportation plan. I also ask that staff try to accommodate as many of the pedestrian improvements as they can at California, the Bridge, and Hazleton.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and put that motion on the screen. So can you read that last bit to me again, Commissioner Wee?
Okay, and ask staff to try to accommodate as many of the pedestrian improvements as they can at California, the Bridge, and Hazleton.
Right. Let me just put that on the screen and then we can discuss. All right. Give me 1 second here. I'll figure this out. And here we go. You should be able to see the motion now. Do you have the motion on screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Excellent.
That's very helpful.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. To your motion.
Do I need a second first, or I got a second?
Vice Chair Melman seconded.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to my motion. So I want to make sure that bicycle lane improvements do not need to be redone if head improvements should occur at these areas. This is mainly a painting exercise, as I understand it, but paint can be semi-permanent. So that's why I included that caveat there for staff to try to include these other pieces. And back to the motion, so we face a horrific environmental crisis with climate change. And will continue to take many, many lives. This is why Sunnyvale has a well-researched and strong climate action plan, a strong active transportation plan, complete streets policy, and general plan, particularly the land use and transportation element. Furthermore, motor vehicles and their drivers are responsible for about 40,000 deaths each year in the US, and the crashes lead to our strong Vision Zero policy. I hear and understand that residents will be inconvenienced by this parking removal in order to make Sunnyvale Ave safer for bicyclists. But I do believe that this is a good reason, saving lives from bicyclists and making bicycling easier, that is worth the inconvenience that they will suffer. Sunnyvale Ave is the only reasonable north-south connection in this part of Sunnyvale for bicyclists that can be made much safer. It is already the primary north-south connection in Sunnyvale, despite its current risks. We must get more people biking and walking and stopping use of their cars. North Sunnyvale serves not only Bishop, but also Columbia Middle School and Fremont High School. Thanks to the great bike lanes on Mary, large numbers of high school students bike to Homestead High School. I hope that good bike lanes on Sunnyvale Ave will encourage more students to bicycle to Fremont as well. Per city policy, we need an efficient transportation network for all modes of transportation, and transportation is prioritized over vehicle storage, AKA parking. We have a good transportation use for this roadway, so that takes precedence over parking. Plus, there are plenty of nearby street parking places for cars displaced by the North Sunnyvale parking removal. To address a little bit of some of the comments, why this route, why not go around? Bicyclists do want the shortest route on Morris and Bay Avenue. Also do not go all the way to Hendy, so that they do not serve many bicyclists very well. North Sunnyvale Ave is a very clear gap in our network that needs to be closed. I personally bike far more than I drive and can haul more on my bike than fits in any of my cars. I ride my bicycle everywhere, at any time, in any weather. I frequently use Sunnyvale Ave Borregas corridor and even rode it today while pulling a small trailer. I encourage everyone here to bicycle more and try to radically reduce your use of a car, as I have done. A staff recommendation for Sunnyvale Ave is fundamentally sound and solidly in line with all Sunnyvale policies and plans. If the Caltrain grade separation stops motor vehicle traffic, by the way, and allows bicyclists and pedestrians through, but not motor vehicles, perhaps Sunnyvale Ave can be a bicycle boulevard in the long run, and parking perhaps restored. But that is not the case at this time, and we have a very viable proposal in front of us now to make Sunnyvale Ave much safer. So I applaud staff for doing a very, very thorough job with their staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Vice Chair Melman, to your second.
Yes, so adding my kudos to the staff, to Commissioner Wee's comments. I think the analyses of the impact with respect to the volume of bicycle traffic that already takes the route on an hourly basis, almost 100 cyclists, and that's on a weekday. On a weekend, actually, the traffic level is higher in some respects because people are going to and from the downtown area, the farmers markets, whatever events that we have. Also, the fact is that the purpose of a street is a transportation route, not a vehicular storage facility, and that the cyclists and pedestrians who walk on the streets are taxpayers just as much as the residents within the direct neighborhood. I myself have taken this route on a regular basis pre-COVID to my job to and from Palo Alto. And as an experience as a cyclist as I was, or am, sorry, not was, am, it is, you know, intimidating when I have to worry about parked cars to one side and people passing me in an unsafe manner, or the fact that I have a VTA bus behind me in another. So the fact that this route is directly past one school and adjacent to another also makes it critical for the safe routes to school network. And so therefore, that is why I support the motion and the change.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Commissioner Haifman.
I'm also going to be supporting this motion. I want to emphasize one point. I mean, this was classified as a safe routes to school type project. Many of the comments were about other ways kids can get to schools. But right now, and in the future, it's going to even be more a route to work. This is a good way to get into the Moffett Park area from vast neighborhoods along Sunnyvale Saratoga Road, all the way down into Cupertino off De Anza, you know, all the way down. They can get over to the road and come all the way down and cross 101 and 237. And to have this segment not have a bike lane just doesn't make sense. It'd be kind of like stopping a freeway for 10 blocks because some residents weren't willing to accommodate it, although a freeway is horrid, so it's probably not a good example. But I do support the pedestrian issues, especially pedestrians getting across Sunnyvale Avenue. Anything we can do there, because if you do choose to park on the west side of Sunnyvale Avenue, then you should be able to get across the street safely to get to your home. Last, I wanted to say, even if the drivers couldn't stop, a homeowner can't guarantee there's a parking space in front of their house. They can't reserve that for their use. It could be 3 or 4 vehicles parked in a row in front of their house. So they still got the problem that a driver can't necessarily stop in front of their house to pick them up. So I'm going to be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Haifman. Seeing no further hands raised, I have a friendly amendment. Oh, Commissioner Bonet, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Chair Mellinger. I would like also to comment and add my support to the motion because as a longtime bicyclist on Sunnyvale Avenue from my home near City Hall to the Moffett Park area, I also found it quite surprising that this stretch along Sunnyvale Avenue was interrupting the otherwise very pleasant commute from downtown Sunnyvale all the way to the top of the Moffett Park area. And if we are to achieve a goal of more bikes on the streets, this necessarily implies that there will be fewer cars. Fewer cars implies more spaces for cars to park. So it seems that everyone benefits when more bikes are on the street. And the other point I would like to make is many comments address the fact that currently cars speed by bicyclists on Sunnyvale Avenue. And I was wondering whether it's feasible also to lower the speed limit simultaneously with adding the bicycle improvements here.
So in order to lower speed limit within California, there are some studies that we need to conduct to measure what the 85th percentile speed limit would be, and such that we can arbitrarily lower speed limit since that with a set standard, if we were to lower speed limits without doing a speed survey study, the court would not be able to recognize the posted speed limit, and our DPS department would not be able to enforce it. So there is a process where we need to follow in order to study conduct a speed survey, and we do individual speed survey on individual streets on a periodic basis, because each of the speed survey would only last for about 7 years. So we do conduct these speed survey for individual roads to see if what the current travel speed are on those streets, and see if there's any opportunity to adjust the speed limit.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Bonet. I would like to make a friendly amendment that for the remaining street parking, that we direct staff to examine adding the parking markers, the parking space markers, the little cross signs, if feasible, to the remaining street parking on Sunnyvale Avenue and some distance along the side streets, to discourage double parking.
So your request is just to ask staff to examine that as a possibility, not to require it, correct?
Correct. It would be to do it if feasible. How's that?
Well, I'm not a particular fan of those. I'll accept that friendly amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just write that down.
I'll accept the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you very much. Question for staff to examine, to examine adding parking space markers, cross marks, if feasible.
My feeling is if we're painting bike lanes and there's paint maintenance that has to be done in any case with respect to bike lanes, then perhaps parking markers would not be that much more expensive in terms of additional.
That mirrors my thinking.
That is my thinking as well. But again, this is only if feasible. And so now I'd like to make a few comments, if that's all right, which is I will be supporting the motion. I want to comment briefly on why I will be doing that. First, I can count at least half a dozen city policies that not only support, but practically demand that we take this step. That includes pretty much the entirety of Section 3 of the land use and transportation element of the general plan, which is, to my understanding, the highest controlling document on land use in the city. This project is specifically and explicitly identified in the active transportation plan, which was adopted by council last summer. With the active transportation plan has an explicit goal to raise active transportation mode share to 10% by 2030. Doing so requires building safe and convenient infrastructure. This is supported by Vision Zero, which specifically prioritizes traffic safety over other transportation considerations. It is demanded by the Climate Action Playbook 2.0, which calls for a 20% per capita VMT reduction by 2029. That's vehicle miles traveled. Achieving this, again, requires prioritizing active transportation. The facts on the ground are that this is the only suitable north-south bicycle pedestrian corridor that crosses the tracks for over a mile. Neither Matilda nor Fair Oaks can be considered an all ages and abilities bicycle facility. They are, in fact, terrifying. And I say that as a fairly experienced cyclist. There's a VTA bus line on Sunnyvale Avenue. Those buses are extremely frightening. I can say that I personally have been passed aggressively and honked at on Sunnyvale Avenue. It is not currently a comfortable bicycle facility, even for me as an experienced adult rider. Under current conditions, if I had children, I would not allow them to ride on Sunnyvale Avenue. I want to discuss briefly the schools situation as well. So Bishop Elementary School's attendance boundaries actually extend considerably south of the tracks, the train tracks on Sunnyvale Avenue, all the way to the Heritage District. Likewise with Columbia Middle School. So for these children to be able to reach their schools without their parents driving them, essentially they need safe bicycle facilities. Fremont High School's attendance boundaries are even more extreme. Fremont is located at Fremont and Sunnyvale Avenue, well into South Sunnyvale. Since the closure of Sunnyvale High School 40 years ago, students in Northeast Sunnyvale have had to commute as much as 6 miles to reach Fremont High School. There is no general education school bus provided, and there are no safe contiguous bike routes from Northeast Sunnyvale to Fremont High School currently, which means that essentially the only options currently for these students is to either A, rely on VTA, which is not a school bus and has reliability issues, or B, to drive or be driven by a family member. So again, we have at this point, we have several hundred, if not thousands, of students and their families who are affected by this decision. So in closing, finally, I want to say it's very clear from staff's opinion, from the staff report, from the questions that we've asked, that there is no way to add an all ages and abilities bicycle facility to Sunnyvale Avenue as city policy requires without removing the street parking. If there were a way to do so, I would support it. However, there is not. It is fundamentally a geometry problem. There is only so much width in the road. City policy, as a city commission, our responsibility is to apply city policy. It is when these projects come before us, we are to evaluate them on the basis of existing city policy, and city policy requires us to move forward with this. That said, it is also the right thing to do. Yes, there is an unavoidable inconvenience to residents on this street by doing this, and I hope the city staff will take every effort to provide ample notice to residents and to minimize that inconvenience as much as possible. However, there is also a dramatic inconvenience to students of Bishop Elementary School, Columbia Middle School, and Fremont High School, as well as anyone commuting from North to South Sunnyvale or vice versa, based on the current conditions. And it is not merely an inconvenience, but it is a safety risk. And the safety of school children really has to be our highest priority as a city. And so with that, I will be voting in favor of the motion. And do we have any further comments from members of the commission? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Tsang, may we have the roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Melman.
Aye.
Commissioner Dave.
Aye.
Commissioner Boney.
Aye.
Commissioner Paraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Owie.
Yes.
Commissioner Hafman.
Aye.
Chair Mellinger.
Aye.
The motion was carried by with 7 yeses.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tsang. All right, next on the agenda, if I can find it, please give me a moment to find my agenda. I have far too many tabs open. All right, next on the agenda is agenda item 3, file 21-0643, discussion on VTA Measure B and Education and Encouragement Program FY 21-22 potential projects. Do we have a staff report?
Hi, yes. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Perfect. So good evening, everyone. My name is Nabila Dean, and I'm a transportation engineer at the City of Sunnyvale, and I have been assisting Lillian in the BPAC meetings. Tonight, I have a short presentation on the VTA Measure B Bicycle and Pedestrian Education and Encouragement Program, which include a discussion of the fiscal year 21-22 potential projects. If you can share the presentation on the screen. I would like to remind the Commission that a motion will not be made for this because it's just a presentation for discussion and for the Commissioners to provide comments on the proposed projects that we are considering. I ask that we hold any questions off to the end so that we can go through the presentation. So the agenda for today is we want to give a brief background on what the Measure B Education and Encouragement Program is for someone who may not be familiar with it, and then provide a brief update on the fiscal year 2021 projects, and then go into the discussion of the proposed fiscal year 21-22 projects and get feedback for that. So for the background, there are several subcategories of the Measure B Bicycle and Pedestrian Program, and one of the categories that we applied is for the Education and Encouragement Program. And this program funds projects that will promote and educate and encourage safe walking and bicycling in the community, specifically for children, adults, residents, and visitors who come to Sunnyvale. So in the last fiscal year, we had 3 projects that we had planned for funding. The first one is the Safe Route to School Incentive Program, which was to encourage students to walk or roll to school by giving them giveaways of that sort. We also had banners for schools that would be made to be able to promote and increase awareness of the Safe Route to School program. And we also had a plan to develop a strategic outreach plan for the Vision Zero campaign. Because of the COVID-19 restrictions and impacts that did happen the last fiscal year, only a portion of the projects were delivered at that time. We will continue to deliver these projects, but for the last fiscal year, we weren't able to do it as much as we had hoped to do. But what we had done is we did purchase several bike lights that were distributed to 19 Sunnyvale schools. We also worked with the City of Santa Clara County on the design for the banners for the schools, as well as coordinated with the school districts for the walk and roll encouragement banners. We are still working with our communication team and our finance department to put together a request for proposal for the strategic outreach plan, and we will continue to deliver this project to get them completed. In the meantime, we would like to now discuss the proposed projects for this fiscal year 21-2022. The proposed projects we would like to discuss are the following. We would like to consider holding bicycle rodeos at public schools, as well as host bicycle safety and in-person workshops for middle school students and their guardians to have them be more educated on how to be safe biking. We want to continue with our Safe Route to School incentives, along with additional giveaways to students at city events. And we want to be able to develop some videos for educational purposes, one for the walking and bicycling safety in Sunnyvale, as well as an educational video similar to what we did for the Hawk Beacon for the pedestrian scramble signal that we have planned in Sunnyvale, as well as providing bike valet at city events. So these are some of the giveaways that we are considering for this fiscal year. We are trying to see which would be the most beneficial. So some of these include, best for students or people who would be biking, like bike bells, bike lights, backpacks that bikers would be able to use, thumb drives that people, people who are commuting and working could benefit from, reflective safety, so when they're biking at night or walking at night, it's safer for them, and rear view mirror so that it's easier for bicycles to be able to see when biking. So we want you to consider these and provide some feedback on what you think would be something we can move forward with. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we can take them now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tseng. I see Commissioner Wee has his hand raised. Commissioner Wee.
This is an area that's near and dear to my heart as a bicycle educator. Actually, could we bring up that presentation again, or the slides? Were we provided the slides in advance? I don't recall seeing them.
No, they were not.
And flip back one more slide. Yes, so let's see. All of these are great ideas. The bicycle rodeo, the in-person workshops for middle school. Let's see, safe routes to school incentives, the biking video, the video on a pedestrian scramble, that would be excellent to do. Bike valet at city events. Go to the next slide, please. Now, the one thing that I would avoid, these disposable bike lights. Whoops, yeah. They're really cheap. They don't work very well. You have to throw them out very quickly. If you're going to do lights, make them a prize or something and do a quality light. That's a rechargeable light that really actually works and is not just a gimmicky thing that's going to get tossed and it just doesn't last very long. So do stuff that's can last a long time. So the safety bands or the reflectorized stuff that you could just use again and again and again. I mean, they're fairly inexpensive. You could also consider safety vests, which aren't particularly stylish, but they are extremely visible. And if you make maybe a cool logo or normalize it, then we get very visible people out there biking. As a regular bike commuter, I do wear my safety vest all the time. I want to make sure that drivers have no excuse for not seeing me because I'm just sticking out like a sore thumb. So they say, that's I'm going to avoid that person. So I know that they aren't stylish for a lot of kids, but maybe we could do something to make them, a new fashion thing. But it's stuff that is durable and reusable and doesn't have toxic waste that gets just tossed, like those little those little lights, they're probably the worst. And like a fun reflector. Reflectors are very durable and they last a long time and you can attach them to stuff and they're cool. And good quality. And also if you do look at bells, do get good quality ones, reasonable quality ones. Some of them have these plastic straps that just break and they don't stay on very well. That's another hard ask to find a good bell. The nice ones are expensive. They sound great though, the nice ones. And maybe those could also be a prize that people are like, oh, now that's a really cool bell and I want to win that prize by doing something. Something else to investigate, I'm not sure if this is in the educational space, but it would be great if we, Sunnyvale, had a traffic garden someplace, a place to educate students about roadways and walking and biking. I've been seeing traffic gardens, and that maybe goes in infrastructure a little bit or a park thing, but maybe some of these educational funds be used to investigate this educational facility that it would be great to have those. When I was traveling in Europe, many schools, each school had their own little traffic garden for many schools. And that was very cool so that kids could practice in their own area versus having a bike rodeo just once to set up and then gets taken down. It's like a permanent rodeo always set up that kids could actually play games on and have fun in their own little towns. So I'm not sure if our school is set up that way, but if the city had one, there are several cities, we look up traffic gardens, city of Knoxville in Kentucky of all places, had a really amazing traffic garden, a little mini town. There was a big play area for kids. So those are my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee, Commissioner Bonet. And by the way, Commissioner Bonet, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are. Thank you very much, Chair Mellinger.
Thank you.
I would like to second Commissioner Wee's comments on the giveaways, in particular, in light of the fact that Sunnyvale has a waste reduction goal of reducing plastic waste, and things that look nice but are usable only for a short time do not follow in accord with Sunnyvale's goals of reducing waste. Although I applaud your efforts here at encouraging people to bike more by providing safety items, I would second the idea of a very good bell, reflectors, and very effective blinking lights, all of which I and my kids use. On the comment, additional comment on what can be done to encourage school kids biking, I think some people may not want to bike or may be reluctant to start biking because they're unsure how to get from their neighborhood to the school. If in addition to these bike rodeos or bike ambassadors, we could have people, volunteers, bike from neighborhoods where people live, leading trains of kids biking, I think this may go a long way towards encouraging bike use in schools too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bonet. Vice Chair Melman.
Yes, so on my bicycle, I actually have spoke lights that have, you're able to actually take the battery out and replace it. So it's a little less of an environmental impact than something that is completely disposable, sealed, one-time use. The other thing I would also suggest would be clip-on spoke reflectors, which are also very inexpensive. They come in various colors. They're a nifty thing to do. And then the things like the drawstring backpacks and stuff like that. Certainly the safety vests are great for pedestrians, especially in the wintertime, because people wearing dark colored clothing crossing the street is a hazard both for the person crossing the street and for the cyclist going down the street who might not see the person in the dark colored clothing when it's a low light condition. The other thing, I guess, would be in terms of cyclists. I know helmets are like really expensive, but that seems to be like a big barrier for kids. And so maybe like for a major prize level giveaway or something like that would be a certain number of helmets or something like that. Or since we have a high percentage of the population who attend our schools, which have, you know, free school lunches, I mean, that's sort of an indication that if they do have a bicycle, that they might not be able to afford the safety equipment. So using, you know,
Vice Chair Melman? Vice Chair Melman appears to have frozen. We will come back to her whenever her internet decides to return. Commissioner Hafman.
I just want to third, I guess I'll say now, third it on the disposable silicon LED bike lights. In fact, in general, on giveaways, I would strongly encourage you to run the giveaway list by the environmental services group in the city and get their comments on that from a waste reduction point of view.
Providing some sort of.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Melman appears to. All right, it looks like she's back. Vice Chair Melman, you are back. I would suggest that you may want to, if you have further problems, I'd suggest cutting your video.
It's unusual. My high speed is usually pretty good. So this is the first time that has ever happened on a public meeting. Or actually any meeting that I've had, it's just whatever. So the other thing I would suggest is for community outreach, we consider bike build projects where we have a bike build for like low income families so that we can provide the kids in those kinds of families with an entryway to cycling to school who might not be able to afford it, because I know we have a high percentage of the population who is in free or reduced school lunch, which, you know, is an indication of poverty. So I don't know what else you may or may not have heard. I was talking about my glowing spoke lights, which have replaceable batteries and they're color changing. So they're very uber cool. And the spoke reflectors were the other things that I mentioned as possible things. And of course, for pedestrians, vests and drawstring backpacks with reflective stripes are really excellent.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Commissioner Paradkar.
I like a lot of the suggestions from other commissioners about reducing the amount of cheap disposable bike accessories being given away. I just wanted to add, as far as inexpensive, while not strictly safety in the vein of previous discussion, I would think water bottles are fairly inexpensive, reusable, and given that it gets kind of hot in Sunnyvale and we're encouraging people to get out and exercise more, that promoting hydration is another form of safety.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Paradkar. I want to echo the comments of my fellow commissioners on making sure that whatever we're doing is not adding to excessive waste. although I disagree with the claim that Sunnyvale gets particularly hot very often.
I would like to say it's not particularly hot, but you know, riding around in a dry climate, doing exercise, hydration is still important when biking in Sunnyvale. That's what I wanted to get at.
It very much is, and I do love the idea of water bottles. A couple of the ideas I don't love so much are pencils and USB thumb drives, as these don't have anything to do with cycling. USB thumb drives in particular are decreasingly useful these days. And they also, on top of plastic waste, they include e-waste, which is its own problem. So I would discourage us from using USB thumb drives as a prize or an incentive. Let's focus on things that have a fairly long life and that are not just going to end up in the trash after a few weeks. I do very much like many of the suggestions that have been provided by our fellow commissioners. While I am sure none of us is qualified to discuss what is or is not cool for the elementary school set, I do think that the spoke lights would be a pretty nifty prize. And I like the reflectors, the stuff that is sort of more durable. And I also do like the idea of having helmets as a higher tier prize. So that's it for my comments, and we'll bring things back to Commissioner. I think Commissioner DeVay has not spoken on this yet, so we'll do Commissioner DeVay and then Commissioner Wee.
I know the kids at Columbia knew there was the sources of bicycle giveaways and helmet giveaways. I believe there's a police auction or something. There's a number of entities in Sunnyvale that provide helmets for those that can't afford them. It would be great if during this incentive, one of them was like a list of places you could get these things or events to watch out for so you could get the free ones, as well as the prizes. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner DeVay, and I think that's an excellent suggestion. Commissioner Wee.
Yeah, following up, those little silicone things, those often do have replaceable batteries, but they're the little button batteries. They don't last very long, and so you end up going through lots of button batteries. And they're not very bright for the little silicone things, for the lights. Water bottles are a great idea, although some people have a lot of water bottles, so be a little bit careful with that. And if you do water bottles, consider doing the water bottle cages also if they can fit on the bike. That way the kids can carry with them more easily on the bike. A lot of them don't have cages on their bikes. There's some other possible things to consider for events, more bike repair events. Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition has been running free ones, but those have been oversubscribed and maxed out almost very quickly. There are obviously a lot of people with a lot of bikes that need repair in Sunnyvale, so maybe having some more of those, and maybe combine that with a Sunnyvale family bike celebration of some sort. Cupertino has been having some sort of bike fest on a recurring basis, and Sunnyvale could do that also. And I agree about thumb drives are old and they're dangerous. They can affect computers, so just don't go the thumb drive route. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Do we have any further comments or discussions on the proposed funding for Measure B bicycle and pedestrian education?
Oh, one more idea. This is a big one. Viva Camino. Let's have an open streets event for Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, so we can have something to compete with San Jose here. If they've got their Viva Calle, we need to have something Viva, something up here in Sunnyvale too.
Yes, food, music, bicycles.
All right.
Walk and roll.
Walk and roll.
And
There
I
you
would
go.
suggest that another alternative to Viva Camino could be along the old Highway 9, which would be Matilda, Sunnyvale, Saratoga, De Anza, Saratoga, Sunnyvale. So it doesn't quite roll off the tongue though. No. All right. So if there are no further comments on this item, I'm going to move on to, wait a minute, we do actually have to hear public comment on this. City staff, are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item?
Chair Malinger, can you open it up first?
I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any, thank you, forgive me. Are there any members of the public wishing to give comment on this item?
I see no hands.
All right, going once, going twice. I'm going to close the public hearing on this item. We're going to come back now. Is there any further discussion from the commission on this item? Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close this item. We're going to move on to 21-0475, agenda item 4, BPAC 2022 study issue sponsorship scenario 1. Do we have a staff report?
A brief explanation of what the study issue process involves. The study issue process is designed to assist City Council with setting priorities for the upcoming calendar year. Board and commission members have 2 roles in this process: to advise Council regarding the identification of policy issues to study, and to advise Council on those issues Council has decided to study. Throughout this year, BPAC has proposed 4 different study issues, and tonight we have 4 potential study issues for BPAC to review and officially vote on sponsorship on each of the individual study issue. Sponsorship means that the study issue is approved for ranking with a majority vote of the board and commission. BPAC can vote to sponsor or drop these study issues. It requires a motion, second, and a majority vote. For any study issue that is sponsored by the BPAC tonight, staff will prepare the study issue paper, including fiscal impacts, and we will bring them back to BPAC for review at the October BPAC meeting. Staff will then incorporate any changes to the study issue paper, and they will be submitted to City Council in the first week of December. The list of sponsored study issues, as well as any deferred study issues that were under the BPAC's purview, will be brought back to BPAC for ranking in January of 2021. So that is a brief summary of the study issue process. And then I will go over the 4 proposed study issues on the list for consideration tonight. The first one is bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure bond measure. It will include consideration of financing option for the active transportation plan. Given the city's constrained financial position, a new revenue source is needed to fund the projects to include it in the ATP. So this study will review options to establish a funding source, most likely a new tax, to generate revenue needed to pay debt service on new bonds issued for the purposes of constructing ATP projects. So the study will identify the process needed to establish a new tax, identify the amount of tax needed to secure the debt necessary to construct the project, and fund public polling to determine the likelihood of passage of a new tax by the voter. As this would be a special purpose tax, a 2/3 majority is required for passage. As part of the study, staff will also explore the availability of federal grants or low interest loan. The study will recommend a path forward to potentially provide funding through new revenues, and also identify potential funding options should a special test fail at the ballot. The second study issue to consider is parking standard for personal electric vehicles, which is short for PEVs, and they're also known as micro-mobility devices, which include e-bikes, scooters, e-skateboards in commercial office. And this study issue will examine the parking standards for these mobility devices in commercial office and multifamily residential zoned area. It will, the study issue will evaluate the following, including the required number of PEV spaces, the number of electric, electric outlet requirements for PEV spaces, pricing standards for charging stations, number of required and secure and unsecure spaces for PEVs, and fire safety requirements for PEV storage. The third proposed study issue to consider is roll-in or fully enclosed bike parking ordinance. The study issue will require staff to conduct outreach with retail commercial developers to discuss the implications, issues of allowing customers to roll in their bike or providing bike lockers or secure indoor bike storage. A marking analysis may be required also. And if changes are supported by the study, they will require modifications to the Sunnyvale Municipal Code, which requires Planning Commission and City Council approval. And lastly, the fourth one is to simplify sidewalk riding ordinance. The study will include a review of existing state laws, city municipal code, and adopted ordinances to identify what is currently mandated by the state law and what kind of local ordinances can be adopted for the operations of bicycles and other personal mobility devices on the sidewalk. If bicycles and other personal mobility devices are allowed on sidewalk, the study will identify the appropriate speed for these devices, focusing on pedestrian safety. If changes to the municipal code or adoption of new ordinances are supported by the study, they will require City Council approval. The study will also include a review of local ordinances and municipal codes adopted by other agencies. And the study will include collision analysis involving bicycles and other mobility devices within the last 5 years in Sunnyvale. And the study will include public outreach to obtain feedback from the public on the study issues. So with that, those are the 4 proposed study issues for BPAC to consider tonight.
Before we begin commissioner comments and discussion, I would like to suggest that we open the public hearing now and receive public comment, and then we can bring it back to the commission. So I'm going to open the public hearing now. Any members of the public wishing to give comment on the proposed study issues for the upcoming cycle, please go ahead and raise your hand or dial *9 on a telephone. All right, going once, going twice. Seeing no members of the public raising their hands, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Wee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lillian, for putting this all together of our study issues. In looking at these, there are 2 of these study issues definitely rise above, and one of them are, and 2 of them I'm not as are. I want to make sure that we use our ammunition efficiently. So one of them I propose, a roll-in fully enclosed bike parking ordinance. That didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to as such as a study issue. So I'm less inclined to actually have that one move forward. We can just sort of park it, maybe come back to it at some stage. Because I do think it's worthwhile. Other cities have done it, but I don't think we're quite there yet. And I personally, I roll into businesses all the time, regardless, and I make them accommodate me. So I'm okay, but I'd like to encourage other people to do it there. But so number 3, even though I propose that, I'm okay with dropping that. The 2 that rise to the top for me are, we need to get funding. We need money to make the changes we want to have. So that number 1 item, that's really, really important, even though it's it's a difficult one, it's challenging. And number 4, simplifying the sidewalk riding ordinance. Our sidewalk, it's just complicated to understand, and we need to make it accommodate all these other devices that are showing up so that we have a consistent mechanism to make sure pedestrians are well protected. And also just make it easy for cyclists when they need to take the sidewalk, but just do it slowly, be at pedestrian speeds. So rather than having this prohibition against cyclists on sidewalks, make sure that they give priority to pedestrians and they can use the sidewalks when necessary, because there are several spots where, strictly speaking, I break the law, but even for me as an experienced cyclist, there's just places that I've got to go on the sidewalk. And even though I could get off my bike, I'm going super slow, and it's just awkward to get on and off the bike. And also with all these devices showing up on sidewalks that are different kinds of things, we don't even have any laws to cover them. I would like to take an opportunity to clean up our code, make it simpler, and make it future-proofed so that we, whatever happens in the future, these devices, we don't have to call them out explicitly, but just establish a speed limit if you're on wheels or on whatever, hoverboards, I don't know, so that pedestrians are prioritized in sidewalks. So those are my thoughts going into this without having anything else specific. And do we need motions, right, on this? But I'm going to wait on a motion until I hear more what my other commissioners think.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Vice Chair Melman.
Yes. I agree with Commissioner Wee in the fact that number 1 is funding, especially since I guess our city transportation funding doesn't have specific call outs for bicycle infrastructure, as far as I'm aware. And so having, since even though part of I guess the taxes and funds that go into maintaining roads and stuff like that should ideally be applied to everybody who uses the road and not just vehicles, that getting funding, I think, for what we need to have implemented is the big priority. The other thing, with the parking standards for personal electric vehicles, I think the staff comment saying that there's secure parking kind of misses the point, in that we're not just talking about secure parking. We're talking about access to charging. Just like for electric cars, these are electric vehicles, albeit they're a different type of electric vehicle. And as someone like myself who has an e-bike with a limited range, it's always nice to be able to find a place where I could actually plug in and extend my range and use of the vehicle. So I think that the comment kind of misses the point, that the fact is what we're not looking for is not just parking, but we're actually looking for charging stations for these vehicles, secure charging stations, I should mention, so that you can lock up your bike and charge it and not have it roll away, or lock up your hoverboard and charge it, or what have you. I agree with Commissioner Wee in that the roll-in ordinance, I think, is a lower priority. And I do agree that simplifying any of the city ordinance with respect to sidewalks, with an eye for protecting pedestrians who have the priority on the sidewalks, but allowing cyclists or personal, I guess, alternative transportation, scooters, hoverboards, segways, whatever, to use them to bring it up to date with that kind of thing in mind would probably be a good thing to look at, in terms of having an established, safe operational speed, so that if we need to get up there, that we can use it. And those are the ends of my comments. And thank you for having this nice summary with the bullet points and everything to make it easy to read and discuss this kind of thing. So I will leave it to my fellow commissioners.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Commissioner Bonet.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Mellinger. I would like to ask whether it's appropriate to request the city, in addition to the items already mentioned, to examine the possibility of modifying the city ordinances to allow what's in other places called the Idaho stop, meaning to allow bicyclists to have a rolling stop through stop signs rather than a full complete stop, which is, I think, right now the traffic ordinance is applied equally to all vehicles, regardless of propulsion method.
So, Commissioner Bonet, I will stop you there. That would need to be filed as an additional study issue for the upcoming year. However, my understanding is that there is state legislation to legalize the Idaho stop that is going to the governor's desk.
Excellent.
So Ms. Sang and Ms. Dean can help you familiarize yourself with the study issue process. But per the Brown Act, we cannot discuss or act upon items that have not been agendized. And so we cannot add an Idaho stop study issue at tonight's meeting.
Understood. That's why I asked it as a question.
Definitely check the state legislation on that. And if it is vetoed by Governor Newsom, then you could certainly put that forward as a study issue for the next year's cycle. All right, Vice Chair Melman.
I'd already spoken, so I wasn't going to add anything. I just forgot to lower my hand.
Okay.
So apologies for that.
All right, I have a couple comments actually. First, I agree with Commissioner Wee and Vice Chair Melman that the roll-in or fully enclosed bike parking ordinance, I think that can safely be dropped or maybe brought back with some additional wordsmithing in next year. I want to agree with Vice Chair Melman's comments regarding the parking standards for personal electric vehicles. and also chime in that for me, actually, besides the charging capabilities, the fire safety aspect was really important for this. I believe I mentioned this when I brought it up, but at my previous job, we actually had to evacuate the building once because someone was charging their scooter and it caught fire. And after that, we got a very sharply worded email that scooters, skateboards, e-bikes, etc., were only to be charged in the bike room and were not to be kept in the office at all. And that bike room was a concrete bunker. So the fire safety aspect of this, I think, is really important. On the bond measure, which I was the proposer on, what I would ask that this not be explicitly tied to the ATP if necessary, that we want it to be funding bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in general. And there are, so the roadway safety plan is not the ATP. I'm not sure the roadway safety plan has been incorporated into the ATP. Vision Zero is calling out some specific projects as well, and I don't believe that's been incorporated into the ATP either necessarily. So I would want for us, and there's always the possibility that we might have some bright idea that is not currently in the active transportation plan. So I would like to make sure that this study issue, that the proposed bond measure is not limited to the active transportation plan, but that it is on specifically just for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Is that possible, Ms. Tsang?
I think that would be possible if the other commissioners, because given that it is a change to the original.
Need to be done as a motion?
Correct.
Okay. Well then, when it gets time for motions, we can discuss that then. Commissioner Wee, your hand is up.
Yeah, I have another question about funding. So versus having a bond measure, I mean, there are a lot of monies going to motor vehicle facilities still. And are we not able to divert some of those more to bicycling and active transportation instead of having to continue to spend them so much on motor vehicles?
So so we do have a lot of projects related to bike and ped that which we are using some of the transportation impact fees that we have been collecting. I mean, for example, if the Sunnyvale project were to move forward, the city, even although we're collecting, we're obtaining a grant, we do need to contribute a matching fund for the grant. So, so we are actually, providing, investing in bike and pedestrian related projects, but not necessarily only on vehicular based projects.
So what I'm asking more is, let's see, rather than having to have a new tax or new bond, can we shift more of the funds that we'd be directing toward vehicles instead to active transportation?
If you look at the TIF money that we are collecting, there's actually a breakdown on what type of projects that we're collecting for. And so there's like individual improvement projects such as like Mary Avenue Overcrossing or the Great Separation, Bernardo Undercrossing. And then we're also collecting for other improvements that are related to bike and ped. And I think there might be a few that are related to intersection improvements, but then when we improve intersections, we are also, that the improvements will actually benefit our users. So there is, so the TIF is designed to provide funding for the listed improvements that are identified already. And there is a bucket for bike and ped in there.
Okay, so well, how necessary does staff believe that, and how likely are we to get approval, maybe if they have some sense of it, for this study issue number 1 here? Any sense, even a feeling?
I can't comment on that. I know that if the BPAC were to sponsor this study issue, we will be working with the finance department to write up the study issue and determine what would be the best options for putting together the ballots.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. All right, if that does it for discussion, I would like to make a motion pertaining to item 1. And my motion is that we approve item 1 as a study issue, that we sponsor item 1 as a study issue with the modifications that we are explicitly asking that the proposed bond measure not be constrained to the active transportation plan, that it be for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in general, rather than solely bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure called out in the active transportation plan. Obviously, the active transportation plan is going to accommodate, is going to be the vast majority of that, but I don't want us to be in a position where, you know, we have a project idea down the line and we say, well, we can't use this money for it because it's not in the ATP.
I'll second. Tim Wee, second the motion.
All right. Ms. Sang, is that enough direction for staff?
Yes, it is.
All right. I guess I already spoke to my motion. Do we have any further comments on this? Vice Chair Melman.
Yeah, I would agree with the edit, I guess, removing the tie directly to the ATP project, because this would enable us to have a source of funding if we identify a quick build project, for instance, without having to go to the ATP or something like that, or for a specific, I mean, and not just bicycle, but also pedestrian improvements. So, I can't talk anymore. I'm sorry. But that was my response in short, that decoupling it from the ATP would allow us to actually have a source of funding for things like quick build projects without having to go through a long drawn out process to fund such things.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Melman. Do we have any further comments? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Zhang, may we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Baraka.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonet.
Yes.
Commissioner Dave.
Is this only for one?
Correct.
Only for one.
Aye.
Commissioner Owie.
Yes.
Chair Mellinger.
Aye.
Commissioner Haveman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Melman.
Yes.
The motion was carried by 7-0 votes.
Excellent. Commissioner Haveman, do you have a motion? Commissioner Haveman, you are muted.
No, I don't. I don't know how my hand got up, but I'll remove.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Haveman. Do we have a motion on study issues 2, 3, or 4? Commissioner Wee.
I move that we move forward with study issue 4, a simplified sidewalk riding ordinance.
All right. Do we have a second for Commissioner Wee?
I second it.
I think Commissioner Haveman beat you to the punch, Commissioner Bonet. And all right, Commissioner Wee, to your motion.
We need to simplify the current law. It's confusing and it doesn't accommodate a lot of the other devices we have showing up. And I want to make sure pedestrians are well protected and we future-proof and make this a more rational ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wee. Commissioner Haveman, to your second.
I agree with everything that Commissioner Wee said. I don't have anything to add.
I will be supporting the motion, and there is one thing I would like to add, which is the current ordinance is written in a manner that is disconcertingly vague. And one of the things that has become apparent over the past year and a half, as you know, the movement for changing the way we approach policing has gathered steam in this country, is that ordinances such as jaywalking ordinances, sidewalk riding ordinances, etc., can, not necessarily are, but can be used to disproportionately profile minorities, and can be used for pretextual stops. And I would like to remove that vagueness from our city code. And so I will be supporting the proposed study issue. If there are no further comments, Ms. Sang, may we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Haveman,
Aye.
Chair Mallinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Dave,
Aye.
Commissioner Paraka,
Aye.
Vice Chair Melman,
Aye.
Commissioner Bonet,
Aye.
Commissioner Ooi.
Yes.
The motion was carried with 7 yes and 0 no.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, so this was on number 4. Do we have a motion pertaining to items 2 or 3?
Sorry, I was going to
Commissioner
say,
Deve,
go ahead.
Commissioner Deve, and then we'll get to you, Vice Chair Melman.
We're probably going to say the same thing about the parking for e-vehicles.
All right. Well, either one of you wishes to make a motion?
I will make the motion that we recommend going forward with the study issue regarding secure parking for personal electric vehicles, which takes into fire safety into account.
Did we lose Commissioner Dev? Oh, there, she's still here. Commissioner Deve, perhaps you would like to second that motion.
I would like to second the motion. Thank you.
All right. To your motion, Vice Chair Melman.
Well, excuse me, as I said, those of us with e-bikes, we know they have a range. Actually, e-bikes are kind of a great equalizer in terms of people with physical abilities who might not normally go for long distances because it's much more sparing on your knees, and it's also great for cargo. And the same thing can be said for like e-skateboards and e-scooters. I see a lot of those out there. I've also seen those weird little mono hover balls or whatever they're called. And having a secure and fire safe place in which to charge them would be a great help, and also would be enable people to use more of that kind of transportation effectively. And then, you won't have to worry about your battery running out if you're, doing a lot of chores. We're not all Tim Wees.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Melman. Do we have any further, Commissioner Deve, to your second?
Sorry, I thought I already did the second.
I mean, you get to speak to your second if you want to.
Well, any facility like that and things that help e-scooters and e-bikes also helps regular bikes and regular scooters, which my kids use all the time. And I just love to see more secure places to put those. And if they've also used E in the past, and I would love to see them be able to extend their range safely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Dave. Are there any further comments on study issue number 2? Seeing and hearing none. I'm assuming your hand is up from your previous comments, Vice Chair Melman. All right. Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Sang, may we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bonet,
Yes.
Commissioner Baraka,
Yes.
Commissioner Dave,
Yes.
Commissioner Haveman,
I'll abstain on this one.
Commissioner Ooi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Melman,
Yes.
Chair Mallinger.
Yes.
The motion was carried with 6 yes and 1 abstain.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a motion on study issue number 3, roll-in or fully enclosed bicycle parking ordinance?
Sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand. It's like
Vice Chair Melman.
Yeah. I would propose, I guess, So the motion would be proposed that we table the study issue or not propose that we not advance the study issue this time around, and that we, I don't want to say table it. What's the expression?
Drop, defer.
Defer, thank you, not drop. Drop is like it goes away forever, right? Until the next round kind of thing.
So for the sponsorship, for the voting for the sponsorship, the only two options would be to either sponsor it or to drop it. The defer is not one of the options within the sponsorship process.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Zhang. I appreciate that. So then I would ask Commissioner Wee if he would be okay with us dropping it for this sponsorship.
I have a question. Do we actually need to drop it, or we just don't make a motion on it, just let it sit there, and that's effectively a drop?
Yeah, we do not. I don't believe we need a motion to drop it.
Okay,
and it
fair
is
enough
eligible. Then. And it is eligible to come back next year, correct?
Yeah. So one of the commissioners will need to submit a study issue paper.
Yeah, resubmit it.
Resubmit it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, then we shall just not pretend it's not there.
Excellent. So I think that does it for the motions. I would like to note that you can begin submitting study issues for the 2023 cycle now. And in fact, I have one or two that I'm probably going to submit in the upcoming weeks to be evaluated for 2023. So you do not have to wait until January to start working on study issues for 2023. You can begin work on those now. And yes, so I believe that does it for agenda item 4, Ms. Tsang. Is there any further direction that you require from us?
Not at the moment.
All right, thank you all very much then. So we are going to close this item. We're now going to move on to non-agenda items and comments and begin with commissioner comments. Commissioner Wee.
This is a little bit of a question actually for Mayor Klein. Sometimes we vote aye, sometimes we vote yes. I noticed the council is consistently voting yes. And I think that's because it's just clearer, and like aye, nay sometimes sounds similar. Or is there a pattern, or is there any?
There is no pattern, there's no requirement.
Okay.
It's yes or aye, nay, no.
Okay.
just like present and attending, and you
and here,
there's lots of options for pretty much
lots of options. Okay.
As long as it's clear and unambiguous.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other just comment I have is actually for you, Chair. With our hearing that we had earlier, I would have actually been more in favor of actually having 3 minutes for the public speaking to make sure they, because they were sort of ready and prepped for 3 minutes. A lot of them were shortened, and we didn't have that. I mean, we had a number, but I like hearing them and not have them too rushed. So just something to consider in the future. Like if we had 50 people show up, yeah, then turn them back. But 10, nah, we can give them 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I was 10 felt like 10 was the sort of limit that I had made for myself at the beginning of the day, but I will take that under advisement and adjust that in the future.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Hafman.
Yeah, comment for staff, actually comment and question. One thing I've learned through this process of Sunnyvale Avenue bike lane situation, and also we're going to see it on the Homestead Road when it finally gets done. People seem to assume that they have a right-of-way on their parking spot. And what I'm wondering is why doesn't the city include a flyer in one of the mailings, making it very clear that the parking spots are public property and that roads are for transportation? Because I don't think most people understand that. A lot of these people that spoke tonight certainly did not. And also at the meeting I attended, people were saying that their neighbors were going to call the cops if they dared park even for a few minutes in front of their own home, in front of the other neighbor's home. Like the neighbor, that's his spot and you're not supposed to be there. And so I don't know if this needs to be a study issue or if you have plans to try to educate the public on this point.
So we typically don't send out flyers unless it's for a particular project or like things such as the utility bill insert for that we prepare with BPAC. So this is not something that the city doesn't typically send out flyers. I could talk internally with my manager to see if there's any other channels that we could potentially bring this message to the public.
Yes, I was thinking of, like we have our insert in the utility bill. I was thinking of that kind of a thing when I said fly.
Yeah, I mean, for the utility bill insert, we typically focus on, bicyclists and pedestrian. So this might not necessarily fit with that type of theme that we typically include in the utility bill inserts.
But there's a utility bill that goes out every other month, so you could do an insert in one of the other ones, right?
So again, because of the budgeting, each year, different departments would be allocated a certain amount to publish utility inserts. So for transportation, for BPAC, we are only doing one per year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Haifman. I have a couple of brief comments. First, I would like to ask commissioners to, in general, refrain from abstentions. Abstentions lead to some very odd interactions with parliamentary procedures. One is never a problem, but when you start having 3 or 4 abstentions, you start to get questions about what is or is not a majority. And so I would, in general, ask commissioners, if you are opposed to something, vote no, even if, my feelings are not going to be hurt. But I have seen situations where multiple abstentions have led to parliamentary confusion. So really, the only real time it's appropriate to abstain as a commissioner is if you are unable to provide an educated vote, essentially. So essentially, the only time I've seen it really used is if is essentially a commissioner's first meeting, they abstain from the minutes. So the second thing I would want to say, I want to bring up is we had a commenter at the beginning of this meeting mention that tonight is Yom Kippur. Last week, the city had a meeting pertaining to the proposed Fremont Corners housing development, and that was on Rosh Hashanah. This is unfortunate. Scheduling public meetings on important religious holidays discourages public participation and leaves members of that religion feeling slighted. And this is true no matter what the religion. We would not schedule a public meeting on Easter or on Christmas. And so I would urge the city to be more thoughtful in ensuring that we do not schedule meetings over religious holidays unless absolutely necessary. And that does it for my commissioner comments. Commissioner Wee and then Commissioner Haifman.
Thank you, Chair. Something I should have mentioned in my first round is that I'd like to give kudos to everyone, and particularly Chair Mellinger. That was an awesome, you run an awesome meeting. This is one of the best meetings ever for BPAC. I'd also like to congratulate staff. Excellent reports, just spot on with all of you've done during this meeting. So thank you all and all my commissioner members for great comments, great thoughtfulness. This was a great meeting all around, and I think we accomplished a lot, and it was a model for our new commissioners. We want to have more meetings like this. So I like the reasonable formality, and we had a good discussion, and so kudos again to our chair for doing a job very well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wade. Commissioner Hafman.
Yes, just a comment on the religious holiday thing. I mean, if we're going to make exceptions for Jewish holidays and Christian holidays, we do have to consider Hindu holidays,
Absolutely.
Muslim holidays. And believe me, there's a lot of Hindu holidays out there. Especially, I have a neighbor who's a Hindu and they have holidays all the time. So we have to be really careful with that.
Well, one of the things I will point out is that as a Catholic, we have lots and lots of saints' days too. They're not all equally important, let's say. And this would be a matter for the proposed Office of Cultural Affairs or others with subject matter expertise in the city to discuss. Mayor Klein.
Yes, and so I'll just comment, what we do right now is definitely, deal with national holidays. And that's basically prescribed from the state or from the federal standpoint. And that's what we work around, whatever those happen to be. And I appreciate what Commissioner Hafman's just said. Definitely as you start looking at all possible holidays, it becomes more and more difficult. And so I totally agree. I tried to move for Rosh Hashanah, move the meetings, so it was multiple nights. So do you block off an entire week? And especially from a commission standpoint, do you, it's like you look at it from where you normally have a specific evening of the month, the third Thursday, the second Wednesday, whatever, and then trying to basically have commissioners not being able to attend because guess what? I've reserved this for a year and now it's falling on a holiday. So I totally appreciate, what the chair is saying. There are quite a few difficulties in trying to do that. And of course, in trying to get as much input as possible is always the case. And, pick a day and you'll find people that have some sort of conflict from that standpoint. But for and I appreciate staff does try to work around these sorts of things. We much like last week's meeting on Rosh Hashanah, we had time limitations based upon state bill and state requirements that we needed to meet, that we couldn't push it off more time without conceivably being sued. So I understand, definitely I'll bring it up with city staff about timing and what we can do for religious holidays. But that being said, it is a difficult thing to do. And that's one of the reasons why conceivably we have, people do email and talk to commissioners and council members prior to meetings because they can't make it on a specific evening. So thank you for those comments though.
Thank you very much, Mayor Klein. And I know that the city does try very hard to accommodate these and that it is a challenge. Vice Chair Melman.
Yeah, as a non, I don't want to say non-observant, but as a more relaxed Jewish person, the problem with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is these are the high holy days for the Jewish calendar, and that they are the holiest days in the Jewish calendar. The other holidays you can wiggle around with more for participation, but the high holy days, you're supposed to refrain from that kind of thing. For those who are of Muslim faith, I would imagine that the Eid would be when Ramadan is broken, would be one of the more high holy days within that calendar. And unfortunately, these calendars are tied to lunar cycles and not calendar cycles. So they do occur at different times of the year, depending on what the lunar cycle is. And as far as the Hindu calendar, I'm not all that certain, I guess Diwali, but that's more of I don't know if there's any prescription as to civic participation. But if the city could please look with respect to the high holy days, since they only occur once a year, yes, one after the other, unfortunately. So it's 2 weeks that's involved. but as best they are able for the future, that would be something to be taken into consideration. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Melman. Commissioner Paradkar.
Yeah, so I guess I can say, at least from my understanding, as a, I guess I'd say more relaxed, observant Hindu, Commissioner Melman was roughly correct in her description of lunar holidays and how that works in Hinduism. Normally, growing up, I wasn't used to. I really appreciate the consideration being made for other religions, and I understand that this kind of has to it seems like this has to happen on a best effort basis because there are holidays occurring at unpredictable times, and I just want to. It does feel really good that that I'm represented in it. That my beliefs are represented in this commission. Growing up, it was a very different experience, but we also, the demographics of Sunnyvale are not really the same as the demographics of the nation as a whole. So the types of exceptions and workarounds that we have to make will be different from what will be true on a federal or even a state level.
Right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Paradkar. I think in closing, one last, I think the mayor's comments about the importance of email and so forth is also valid. And I do believe that the clerks and city staff will still read comments into the record if you send them and ask them to be read into the record as part of the original COVID-19 measures. It does seem to be implied from the script that I'm reading. Mayor Klein, do you know if that's still the case?
It depends on whether or not, and usually, yes, the city clerk will do that if that's a specific request. Ultimately, if I can't attend the meeting, as long as that person isn't also showing up at the meeting to take another 3 minutes. So the city clerk will read that into the record for up to 3 minutes, depending upon how long your note is. So that's also part of that issue. So depending upon how long and how many words somebody uses when they are writing such a note.
One final suggestion before we close the loop on this might be that when it is unavoidable to have a meeting on such a holiday, that it be noticed as far in advance as practical, and that the option to send in written text to be read into the record be advertised as well. So that would also help to mitigate some of these concerns, I think. Or even pre-recorded text, even a pre-recorded message. No, can't do that one. Fair enough. All right, with that, do we have any further commissioner comments? All right, then moving on to staff comments.
Tonight I have a couple of comments. In terms of the improvements that we are implementing on Homestead, between Mary and the other intersections for the other entrance to Homestead High School, the signing and striping and concrete work are done. The pedestrian scramble is anticipated to be activated sometime in either October or November timeframe. So that is an update for that project. Council would like us to continue telepresence only meetings for as long as this method is permissible. For now, Executive Order N0821 allows us to continue with our current Zoom model through September 30th of this year. There is a possibility that a subsequent executive order or a change in the state law will allow this model to continue into October or longer. So we'll keep all the commissioners updated as soon as there is an update.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sang. I did realize I had one further comment, which is Commissioner Bonet. I found the bill for the Idaho stop. It is AB 122, and it is on the governor's desk. He has not yet vetoed or signed it.
Thank you very much.
So if you are interested in Idaho stop legalization, the bill you're interested in is AB 122. Commissioner Wee.
There's a related bill, the getting rid of jaywalking in California
Yes.
also is on his desk as well.
Yes, and I don't have the bill number for that one in front of me. All right, moving on to information only reports items 21-0294. Do we have anything on the annual work plan, city staff? Nope.
We don't have any special announcements.
Any updates on the remaining information only items, the active items list or the deferred study issues?
Staff does not have any updates on those.
All right, if there are no further reports from staff or comments from commissioners, I am going to declare this September 16th meeting of the Sunnyvale Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission adjourned at 9:35 p.m. Thank you all and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you. And thank you again to staff. That was a great presentation. Lots of information nuggets. Loved it.
Yes. Kudos to staff. Hats off.
Yes, yes, that was a really good deep dive. I loved all that data. It was great.
Mhm. All right.
Good
Thank you,
night.
folks.
Night.
Have a great night.
Night.
Bye.